Am I the asshole for jumping out of the way when my niece and nephew tried to push me into a pool, causing them to fall in instead? Original post. OOP reluctantly goes to a family BBQ. OOP's nephews and nieces push people into the pool and eventually try with OP. OP sees this coming from a mile away and steps out of the way, and the kids fall in, along with the phone they were holding to record. OP's sisters got pissed for almost letting their kids drown, and because the phone is now at the bottom of the pool. They insist that OP should have let the kids push him into the pool and OP needs to apologize. OP is voted NTA update post. OP spends the first part of this post explaining that the kids were fully capable of swimming and that the party ended on a sour note. Turns out drunk BL who faceplanted had to get stitches. Sisters and Bills texted mean shit to OP and he and his wife blocked them. Mom and Dad were pissed at the text and made the sisters apologize and end this nonsense. OP thought things were over but instead gets a text from one Bill saying OP needs to reimburse them for the phone. OP refuses, sends a screenshot to his parents and says he's going no contact with sisters. In what OP says is an out-of-character move, Dad calls sisters and rips them a new one. Grandkids are no longer welcome at their place indefinitely, which messes up the free babysitting Mom provides. They are banned from the vacation house and he tells them that OOP owns that vacation house, not the parents. Sisters freak out. Sisters and husbands come over unannounced to apologize a few days later. OP and wife are out at dinner so they leave a note. OP decides no contact is the best option for now. Update 2. Well, it's been an interesting last few days. I thought the shit had hit the fan before, but it was more of a fart compared to what's happened this week. TLDR. OP provides financial context here. OP's sisters think parents are dripping in money when in fact they are not. Turns out oldest sis and her fam have been living beyond their means and are in need of a loan, which parents can't give. She's also been renting out the vacation house once a month or so for the last 3 years and has been keeping the money. Another sister was aware of this and possibly has rented it out previously as well. OP's parents feel awful and let OP know. They figure that the sisters will try to convince OOP to let them rent out the house. Turns out they're right. The sisters show up and practically force their way inside OOP's house to convince them to let them use the place. They also say, quoting from OOP here, "I've been a shitty brother and that I needed to step up and plan on paying for their kids' college tuition since that's what family does." OOP calls them out on their bullshit and there's a huge blow up and the sisters leave. OP is exhausted, frustrated and drained. Update 3. TLDR. OP's parents decide they're done managing the vacation home, keeping track of who was using it, routine maintenance, etc., because sisters keep pressuring them to use it. OP feels bad for his parents because he wanted them to be able to use it regularly and now dynamics have changed, but he gets it. OP locks the gate with a heavy-duty chain and lock, resets all keypads and creates new codes, gets security cameras and has signs put up saying the area is monitored by video. OP gets a call from both husbands trying to convince him to let them use the house, like they always have. The older BL tried to go up with some friends but couldn't get in. He threatens on the phone to basically break in and acts completely entitled. Other BL sounds like he is being made to call by sister. OOP obviously says no and considers selling the home. He also has no plans to initiate contact with sisters and they are not talking with him. Update 4. TLDR. OP hires a guy to look after the vacation home. Parents are continually pressured by sisters to tell OP to open up the vacation home for Thanksgiving. They refused and instead said they would organize a gathering at an Airbnb if everyone split the cost, otherwise they would host at their place. This causes an argument because the middle sister is for Airbnb, and the oldest sister doesn't have any money. So Thanksgiving will be at my parents' house but OOP and wife won't be there. Parents ask OOP to not sell for now as they would like to still use the place, but won't until sisters have come to terms with the new normal. Wife and OOP have stayed no contact with sisters, but they have called and left messages. OOP says F you Google Voice, demanding OOP meets with them and work out how everyone can use the family vacation home. OOP doesn't respond. OOP also does not plan to turn the vacation home into an Airbnb. This part is directly from the post. My parents tell me that the oldest sister and her husband are getting out of the leases for their SUV and big-ass truck and are selling their jet skis and some other shit they've never needed. That's going to be really hard on her. She's quite the braggart and won't like being seen in something older, smaller, cheaper. My Bill's identity is very much wrapped up with his truck as well. He even has a small tattoo of the truck company's logo. Which frankly is one of the many reasons why he and I never hung out. Update 5. Things have gone to hell. I really, truly did not think anything like this would happen. Short version, My brothers-in-law broke into my vacation home and were arrested. They've been charged with breaking and entering, destruction of property and communicating threats, all Class 1 misdemeanors. I've refused to drop the charges. I might do so if I'm fully paid for the damage they caused. They were still in jail as of Saturday evening. I assume they're out by now. Editor's note: my TLDR of the next part of the post. Bills went to the vacation home and cut through the chain, damaged the gate. They messed up the front door trying to get in, ended up getting through another door and then broke into the barn. David, the guy OOP hired to manage the home, called the cops. Cops didn't buy Bill's excuses that they were allowed and OOP was unreachable at the moment due to spending the day with his wife's family and leaving the phones in the car. Bills were booked at the sheriff's office. Sisters freaked out but OOP had them blocked. Older sister couldn't afford bail because their cards were maxed out, so middle sis would have to pay for everything. OOP and his wife checked their phones late on Friday on their way home and found that mom and dad, the sheriff's department and David had all called. OOP called David when he got home and found out the extent of the damage. He ended Friday calling the sheriff's department and telling them it wasn't a misunderstanding and that Bills did not have his permission to be there. From OOP's post: I waited until Saturday afternoon to call my folks. They were both pretty rattled about it all, my mom in particular. My sisters had browbeat them into telling me I should tell the cops it was all a mistake and that I wanted the charges dropped. I refused flat out, told them there was no way I'd do that until I spoke with an attorney and also not until I was paid in full for whatever it will cost to fix everything 100%. My mom was crying hard by the time we got off the phone, which of course made me feel like shit. My dad suggested it was time for a complete start over but also said he thought they needed to pay for the damage. I haven't gone up to the property yet. There's nothing I can do and I'll probably go nuts when I see the damage in person. The photos are bad enough. I'm hoping for tomorrow or Wednesday, but my job isn't one I can just wander off from for non-emergencies. I've left messages with 2 attorney friends asking them to recommend the right lawyers to go after my sisters and BILs. I don't know what I can do exactly, but I'm hoping to get restraining orders. I have all the texts they've sent me. That might help. I'm strongly considering suing them for the money they made renting the place. I don't care about the cash, but it will help make them as miserable as possible. The gloves are definitely off at this point. A couple of side notes. Bills had no idea I'd hired someone to keep an eye on things or that there are cameras there now. My parents knew but hadn't told them because they knew it would just give my sisters a reason to drama up. There are signs on the property stating it's being monitored with cameras and no trespassing signs though. My wife has completely had it at this point. I don't blame her, she's been more than patient about it all, but she reached her limit and was not shy about letting me know. She told me it's up to me how I deal with this, but that she thought they all needed to be taught a hard lesson. Older BL likely won't face any repercussions at his job over this, but middle BL has a security clearance so he might. I'm hoping that will be motivation for middle Bill to pay for the damages himself immediately. David, the caretaker, has an interesting background. I knew he was friends with some of the deputies, figured it was because they were all locals. I was wrong. He was a cop in a big city for years, was shot on duty and afterwards decided to quit and move to where his parents had retired. He has some PTSD over it all. His dog is a certified service animal and is usually with him. I know law enforcement people tend to hang together. I guess that's how they became his friend group. I don't want to see or speak with these a-holes for the rest of my life. I know this is in direct conflict with my overwhelming urge to make their lives as miserable as possible. Update 6. Didn't think I'd be doing another post this soon, but a lot has happened over the past 2 days. Short version, I think the corner has been turned on this crap. Thursday afternoon I got a courier-delivered envelope at my office. In it was a signed letter from both my brothers-in-law and a cashier's check for $5,000. In the letter they made what I have to say was a really sincere apology. Among other things, they acknowledged breaking in, acknowledged it was wrong, said the $5,000 was to pay for the damage and that they'd pay more if it cost more than that. Also said they'd stay away from the vacation home unless my wife and I specifically invited them. They also asked that I do what I could to get the charges dropped as soon as possible because they both could lose their jobs and that they'd agree to a restraining order or whatever else it took for that to happen. There was more as well, all conciliatory, but that's the gist of it. To say this was a shock is an understatement. It was, obviously, a total 180 from their past behavior. I'd already made an appointment with an attorney to see about suing my BILs over the damage and to try to get a restraining order. I called him and told him what I'd just received and he agreed to meet with me at the end of the day instead of next week. Told me not to deposit the check. We met for about 2 hours. He ended up recommending the wife and I do a settlement and mutual release agreement with all 4 of them, sisters and BILs. He said if we went after them via a lawsuit that we'd almost certainly win, but that it could take 2 years or more, there would be sizable upfront legal fees and that we might never see any money. He also said we could keep the $5,000 free and clear even if we didn't let them off the hook. He's drawing up the agreement. It won't be ready until Monday. The agreement will include what's essentially the civil equivalent of a restraining order. I'd already asked my property manager to work up a bid to get the damage repaired. I called him after the meeting and asked that he get me as close to an estimate as possible ASAP. Got that Friday. He thinks it will take around $4,000 to fix everything. Most of that is for the front door. On Friday, my attorney contacted each of the BILs, told them what we were proposing and advised them to get their own lawyers. They both agreed to it. The middle BIL told him they could afford to either pay for the damages or pay for a lawyer, but not both, and they figured a lawyer wouldn't make any difference given that they really had no defense for what they did. His biggest concern was if the charges could be dropped. From what I can tell, they're willing to do anything, sign anything to make this all go away. My attorney also called the DA's office on Friday to discuss dismissing the charges, got the name of the prosecutor and left them a message but has not spoken to them yet. He thinks they'll dismiss the charges because the bills are paying up and they have no priors, but then again he's not a criminal lawyer. Also said I should be prepared to drive up there Monday or Tuesday and tell the prosecutor in person that I want everything dismissed. He's also advised me to continue to be no contact with sisters and BILs especially for the next 6 months, and that it will be really important to follow the terms of the agreement when it comes to future interactions with them. I'm guessing that the BIL's change of heart is due to them having figured out what's at stake for them, what it's going to cost them in legal fees and fines and so on. There's also the highly unlikely possibility that they could go to jail for up to 120 days, and as I've mentioned, one of them has a security clearance for his job that could be at risk. So this is their Hail Mary pass to keep their normal lives. This isn't a perfect resolution to the situation, but at least it will get me past the legal and financial parts of the shit show that I've been in for the past few months. I doubt I'll ever have a civil relationship with any of them ever again, and that's fine. What I want most at this point is to close this off, get on with my life and never speak to any of them again. I'm exhausted from this. Wife feels pretty much the same way. Kind of a side issue, but getting the written apology was, weirdly, a huge moment for me. I wasn't expecting that ever, but apparently it matters to me quite a bit. The money doesn't feel particularly important at this moment. I'll damn sure take it though. Also, I'm pretty certain my middle sister and her husband came up with the money. The cashier's check is from the credit union of the company he works for. Once things are signed, I plan to make one more update, probably just an edit to this post. I'm sorry for being so pedantic. Writing these posts has helped clear my head and the feedback has really helped. I truly appreciate everyone's comments, insights, and support. And I really, really hope none of you ever have to go through this kind of nonsense. Update 7. Tuesday morning I met with my attorney and went over the agreement. Changed a couple of minor things and he sent it to my sisters and brothers-in-law. It included a requirement that they pay my attorney's fee, about $3,000. They weren't happy about that and tried to negotiate it away, but he told them they either accept it as is or there would be no deal at all and we'd proceed with suing them for the money they got from renting out the place, wear and tear from renting it, repair costs from their break-in, emotional distress, lost income from having to deal with this, attorney fees and whatever else we could. He also told them I would push hard with the DA's office to prosecute every charge. Short version, they came in and signed. I wasn't there. I'm told it was a pretty tense environment, that the middle BIL appeared to have taken charge and that at one point he told both of my sisters to shut the hell up or he was walking away from the whole thing, making his own deal with us and the rest of them could all go to hell. They provided another cashier's check for $2,500, claiming that's all they had. It's close enough that we're going to accept it as the final payment. Attorney also told me that everyone was very cold and curt towards one another, but that they all managed to keep it together long enough to sign and left without making too big of a scene. I drove up to the vacation house early yesterday to check out the damage and meet with the DA's office. Seeing the damage made my blood boil. It was so senseless. I was so pissed that I was ready to eat the cost of repairs and do everything I could to ruin their lives. Tried walking it off, failed utterly. Ended up calling a good friend who was kind enough to stay on the phone for over an hour letting me spew and vent. He eventually got me back to focusing on the bigger picture of putting this behind me and getting on with my life. Honestly, I'm still not sure that's what I want to do, but I settled down enough to get some food in me and I felt better. After lunch I went to the DA's office, hadn't made an appointment and had to wait a while but got to meet with the assistant DA who's got the case. Short version is that since I don't want to prosecute and the BILs have already paid for the damages, that they are willing to drop all the charges except trespassing, which in this case will be a Class 2 misdemeanor. The BILs will have to plead guilty and pay whatever fine the judge sets. I'm also told that if they fight the trespassing charge or ever so much as fart in public up there, that it would go very poorly for them. It helped that the BILs didn't resist arrest. If they had, none of the charges would have been dropped. I also went by the sheriff's office to thank them for getting there so quickly and everything. Wanted to thank the deputies personally but only spoke to the dispatch person. And I tried to meet up with David, the property manager, but couldn't get hold of him. A couple of notes. The agreement includes a no contact clause. Basically, if any of them show up where my wife or I are, or the other way around, whoever got there last has to leave immediately. No contact except through attorneys or other mutually agreed upon third parties. They get to keep whatever they made from renting the vacation house, my big give, unless I have tax consequences which they will be responsible for. And we release each other from all other liabilities up through the present. There's more to it than that, but those are the high points. Wife and I will sign the agreement later today. After that I can't talk about most of this, but I can talk around it. I think this is my final update regarding all this nonsense, but I'll respond to comments if I can. As I've said before, posting about all of this and reading folks' thoughts and responses has been really helpful and has probably been key in my being able to handle this in a relatively healthy way. So thank you all again. Update 8, thought it would be worth an update for anyone who's interested. Unsurprisingly, my oldest sister and brother-in-law have filed for Chapter 7 bankruptcy. While I don't care about what happens to them financially or otherwise, they've also managed to drag my parents into their mess, which I'm not happy about. At the start of the year, my BIL's oversized customized Pride and Joy truck was repossessed. Pretty embarrassing for him, I'm sure. Happened at work. This was their breaking point. Without the truck they have to share a Kia my parents loaned them, and they can barely fit in it with their 3 kids. Financially they're effed. They owe at least $125,000, probably more, on high-interest credit cards. They have zero equity in their house, and have a couple of personal loans that I'm pretty certain they got under false pretenses. They have loans on their jet skis, ATVs and trailers. They also owe a chunk of money from defaulting on the truck lease. They hadn't made any payments on their credit cards or loans in months and were behind on their house payments as well. They got out of the lease on my sister's massive SUV late last year. They were upside down on it as well, so had to come up with cash to do so. They also had to pay an attorney, the fine and court costs for my BIL's trespassing charge at the vacation house. And they owe my middle sister and her husband money for bail and their portion of the damages to the place. As I've mentioned before, my folks have never been financial wizards, but they have at least been generally responsible. They're retired, their home is paid off, and they live off of Social Security and pensions. Altogether they get more than they spend. Minimal savings, just an emergency fund. Turns out my folks emptied out that fund, cashed out their small IRA, $20,000, and gave it to my sister. That let her catch up on the house payment and cover the negative equity on her car lease. But now literally every bit of savings my parents possessed is gone. Plus my parents have been paying for their groceries for several months and continue to pay the insurance on the car they loaned my sister. According to my dad, my sisters worked my mom for weeks to get her to fork over the money. They'd worked on both my folks at the same time for a while, but my dad flat out refused every time. Eventually mom caved. She was worried that my sister would have to move to a hovel in some backwater town and that the kids would be barefoot and eating dirt. Dad's not happy about it, and to say there's some tension between them right now is an understatement. But they'll be fine. I was pretty disappointed when my parents told me all this, but I wasn't surprised. It sucks that they emptied out their savings to help, but I kind of get it. The way the bankruptcy laws are in our state, by getting caught up on the home loan, my sister should be able to keep the house. I tried hard not to say how I felt about this, and my sisters mostly succeeded. Really, I'm way more pissed about this than I should be. The worst part for me is that my sister and BIL could now contact me and my wife without any real fear of repercussions. The only penalty the no contact agreement has is that if they violate it, we can go after them for the money they made from renting out the vacation house and related damages. Since they've filed for bankruptcy, that's now not an impediment for them. I'm hoping they'll leave us alone, but who knows. Folks also told me that my middle sister and her husband have hit a rough spot, and that he's not currently living with her and the kids. Just a guess, but I imagine he's had it with the whole family dynamic that caused this nonsense. Not directly related, but on a brighter note, I've spent 2 weekends at the mountain house since the start of the year, once with my wife and once alone. Both times there was a lot of snow. It was incredibly beautiful and relaxing. Very therapeutic. The place also has good internet service now, thanks Starlink, which is nice. Plus knowing that I can count on David, the property manager, to keep the place in shape, ready for us to visit and to help if we get snowed in, eliminates most of the stress in owning it. My folks have used it a few times as well and get along great with David. Relevant comments. Could you get a restraining order? If they start up again, I do indeed plan to get a restraining order. In fact, my wife made it clear to me she expects a very hard approach to any BS from them going forward, which I agree with, of course. I had the security cameras at our house upgraded at the start of the year just in case they come by. I also kept all their previous texts and provided screenshots to my attorney for safekeeping. If they cause any trouble at the vacation house, they're toast. The sheriff's department and DA's office have the full story and are sympathetic to our situation. $125,000 on credit cards? $125,000 is my estimate based on my sister telling my parents they were racking up at least $3,000 per month just in credit card interest. She thought it might be more. Their credit was already crap before the bankruptcy, so I'm guessing they might be paying as high as 28% interest. If so, they'd owe about $125,000. If they're paying a lower interest rate, the principal would be higher. But yeah, it's an absurd amount, and that $3,000 doesn't include all the other interest they're paying. And of course there's the principal that just sits there. On the other hand, I'm told they had a great time going to Disney World for a week, so there's that. Middle Bill. Younger Bill seems to be more decent than I've given him credit for in the past. I'll admit to a bit of myopia. For years I've seen the four of them and their kids as just one mass of inconvenient people I have nothing in common with but can't avoid. But he seems to have hit his limit and made some changes. Hope it works out for him and that he pulls my sister in the right direction. How sisters got so entitled. My sisters, and I, weren't raised to be like they are. When I was young, they weren't any more self-entitled than any other teenagers. We all worked crappy teenage jobs, didn't get spoiled. It was really a very standard suburban upbringing. We weren't super close, but we weren't enemies. Somewhere along the line after going off to college, they changed for the worse. I guess it could be worse. They could have become drug addicts or militant vegan volcano worshippers or whatever. But they sure became people I don't want to be around. And yes, the pool incident was the spark for the meltdown, but the fuel had been accumulating for years. It would have come out at some point that she was renting the house out on the sly, and things would have gone to hell then, just like they did now. Update 9. There's been a fair number of requests for an update, and considering it's coming up on the 1-year anniversary of the pool incident, I thought I'd post one. My folks worked through Mom giving my oldest sister her IRA and their emergency fund. Altogether, Mom gave her $45,000. According to Dad, once Mom realized how much she'd been manipulated, she got as mad and upset as he'd ever seen her. I think she had a moment of clarity. She and Dad ended up calling my sisters on a 3-way call, and according to Dad, it went south pretty quickly. Sisters were gaslighting them. Mom lost her cool and ended up ripping into them hard. There were lots of tears, and eventually both sisters hung up. Mom really just wanted both sisters to acknowledge that they'd put her and Dad in a risky financial situation. Typical blow-up, I guess, but not the kind of thing that happens in our family. The next morning, my dad called my older sister and told her he'd be picking up the car they'd loaned her. She tried to argue, but he told her it wasn't up for discussion. He got a neighbor friend to take him to her house as soon as he hung up and drove it home without talking to her. Sister called and went off on him, said lots of nasty stuff, which of course hurt him. But at least they have the car back. Dad also told me something that left me dumbfounded. For the last 17 years they were giving both sisters a grocery allowance that was up to $500 per month. What the effing F? I'd thought I had a pretty good handle on where their money was going, but clearly I was wrong. This started back when I was going to graduate school and living at home. My sisters asked for the money because they thought it wasn't fair that I was living at home rent-free, and then it just never ended. In any case, my parents cut them off. Unsurprisingly, my sisters weren't happy about it. Who the hell gets an allowance from their parents when they're in their 40s? Because of all this, my folks and sisters quit talking for a while. Don't know if they've resolved everything, but they appear to be on speaking terms again, though my folks aren't having them or the kids over. I'm in don't ask mode. It's their business. My folks are using the vacation home fairly regularly. Currently they're there for a 2-week stay and will probably make it 3. Unfortunately, my wife and I haven't spent any time there lately, other than me having made a couple of day trips to check on it and drop off some supplies. The property manager I hired, David, is still taking good care of the place. Side note, middle sister told my mom that the oldest sister had been making over $6,000 per month renting the house out, and that it had been going on for nearly 3 years. Pretty certain she didn't declare the income, so that's like grossing $8,000 to $9,000 per month. I will forever find that galling. Oldest sister and BIL still have their house. My attorney checked up on their bankruptcy case. The court converted it from Chapter 7 to Chapter 13, which I believe means they have to pay back a lot more of their debts. Middle sister and her husband are still separated. I don't know if my middle Bill has had any issues with his security clearance because of breaking into the house. I do know he's still with the same big defense company. At my parents' request, I've been working on putting their house into a trust. They want me to manage their affairs as they get older and keep the house safe from my sisters. I'm working with an attorney, but it's not done yet. Folks have asked me to be the trustee and have also given me full power of attorney. The best part about the last few months is that my sisters, Bills, have left us alone and have stayed away from the vacation home. Wife and I are really happy to be back to our normal lives. Hope everyone else's lives are going great. Update 10, December 14th, 2024. Some folks have asked for an update. Here you go. In August, my attorney let me know he'd received a letter for me from my middle brother-in-law. This was the first contact from any of my sisters or their husbands since they'd been arrested. It was a long letter, had a sincere apology, and a lot of information he thought I should know. Biggest thing was that he and my sister are divorced, not separated. He moved out and filed for divorce right after we made the settlement agreement. He and my middle sister kept it quiet until it was done. Their house sold in June and she's moved to an apartment. He told me that his being arrested last year, along with my other BIL, for breaking into the vacation house could have cost him his job and killed his career, and that it was a huge moment of clarity. He said that the dynamic between the four of them, my sisters, him and my oldest sister's husband, had become totally toxic, that they are all borderline alcoholics or worse, and that he had to get away from that environment. He no longer speaks to my oldest sister or her husband. He also asked if he, my dad, and I could meet and have an extended conversation, as there were things he needed to talk about in person. Frankly, I was unenthused, but my wife thought it was worth doing. I asked my dad if he was interested. He was, so I relayed a response to now ex-Bill through my attorney and we met over lunch. We talked for over 2 hours. It was pretty exhausting. Ex-Bill looked better than I'd seen him in, well, forever. He's quit drinking, is in therapy, has lost a lot of weight and looked fit. He was apologetic about all the BS he'd been involved in and apologized to my dad for hiding the divorce. Told us therapy is really helping him. Asked me if the $5,000 he'd sent covered all the damage to the vacation house. I told him it had, and thanked me for talking to the county prosecutor. Said he is strongly considering transferring to a new project that would have him living overseas for the next few years, that he really needed to reset his life, but he was trying to balance his mental health against not being part of his kids' lives every day. Ex-Bill also hit us with what for me was quite the WTF. Apparently my sisters have hated me since before I was born, but have always hidden it from the rest of us. They liked things better when there were just the two of them. He said when they drank, which was whenever they were together, my sisters would often bitch about me being the favorite child, how my folks gave me more opportunities than they had, how my doing well was a result of that, and that I didn't deserve my success. None of that made any sense to me or my dad. All three of us went to the same public schools, had dumb part-time jobs, etc. My folks paid for 100% of their college, not mine. I got a full scholarship. I was pretty shocked by this, but my dad was literally speechless. Dad eventually said he had no clue they felt that way as kids and that he and Mom had never favored any of us. He's still having a hard time with this. Personally, I'm embarrassed that I was clueless about it all my life. But it does explain a lot. Ex-Bill warned us that my sisters and remaining BIL intended to put on a full court press to alienate my folks from my wife and me. They also plan to keep the grandkids away from my folks to pressure them. He said that they're still 1000% convinced that my folks are sitting on a ton of money. They want some of it ASAP and are sure I'd stop my folks from giving them anything. That got a laugh out of my dad because he and Mom simply don't have any real money. They do have their house, of course. Ex-Bill also told us that he and my middle sister had rented out the vacation house a total of 6 times over the years. He offered to pay me what they'd made. I declined and told him it was in the past. He also told us my older sister Bill had never declared the income from renting out the vacation house. He didn't want to get in trouble with the IRS. Both my dad and I spoke with ex-Bill separately for a few minutes. Don't know what they talked about. I thanked him for his apology and for making things right financially. Also wished him well and told him I'd be willing to talk with him again down the road. Don't think that's going to happen. I probably could have been more forgiving, but I think he appreciated me not bullshitting him by acting like all this crap hasn't affected my wife and me. There was more, but it's less important, and this is too long as it is. After ex-Bill left, I asked my dad if he, Mom and I could sit down and talk about all this. I didn't mean immediately, but that's how he took it. He called Mom and let her know I was coming over, so I rolled with it. She was pretty hurt by my sister's plans to ruin her and Dad's relationship with me and my wife and to use the grandkids as pawns. She cried a lot and wanted to confront them immediately. Dad got her to put a pin in that for a while. Mom was also dumbfounded about me supposedly being the favorite child. She feels like they were actually more strict with me because I had a hard curfew and my sisters didn't. To be honest, I barely remember that. It was 25 years ago. A couple of side notes. Middle sister eventually told our folks she's divorced. She's currently living off child support and her half of the home sale. Supposedly she's trying to find a job. My parents have gone low contact with both sisters. No idea how permanent that is, but Mom seems like she's completely had it with them for the foreseeable future. They're spending a lot of time at the vacation house. We're up there over a month at one point. Bill found my Reddit posts. He's not terribly happy about them but feels they're more or less accurate, though obviously he found them slanted towards my point of view. He disagreed that he's boring but said to be fair that he finds me boring as well. I can live with that. Our worlds don't have much overlap except my sister. We got the trust set up for my parents' house. I'm the trustee. All this has been emotionally draining for me. I decided it would be a good idea for me to see a therapist again. I've seen one in the past, mainly for stress-related issues. I've been doing so for a while and it's definitely helpful. Therapist tells me my decision to stay no contact with my siblings is healthy for now but also wants me to keep an open mind down the road. My parents chose my brother over me, hid my inheritance, and now seek my help after his fraudulent betrayal. My parents supported my brother after he slapped me during my son's birthday celebration. When he attempted to take their house, which was actually mine, years later, they pleaded for assistance. Eric, my younger brother, is 28 million, and I am 35 million. Favoritism was so blatant in our home while I was growing up that it was painful. My parents behaved as though Eric was a priceless treasure that had to be safeguarded at all costs from the moment of his birth, while I was just there. I still recall my 10th birthday celebration being cancelled due to Eric's cold. They couldn't risk him feeling excluded from the festivities because he only had a cold, not even a fever. As we aged, things only got worse. I was the debate team captain, a straight A student, and even received a partial scholarship for my SAT results. My parents, however, hardly noticed. They were too preoccupied in complimenting Eric on passing his classes with C grades. The same thing happened at every parent-teacher conference. They would ignore my accomplishments and concentrate on how they could support Eric in doing better. At the age of 18, I moved away with the intention of succeeding without their continual comparison. I earned a degree in computer science, worked several jobs to pay for education, and got a fantastic position at a software business. I met my wife, Darla, 33F, there. She is intelligent, kind, and, in contrast to my family, she genuinely acknowledges my accomplishments. James is our 1-year-old kid, and we were married 5 years ago. Eric, however, never left the house. After one semester, he left community college because it was too stressful, and returned home. At the age of 28, he continues to live with our parents and works part-time at a nearby video game store. He spends much of his time playing video games. This is entirely made possible by my parents. They cover all of his expenses, including his meals, bills, auto insurance, and game subscriptions. My mother literally broke down in tears when I suggested that Eric might want to look for a full-time job, saying that I was being too harsh on her sensitive little boy. We threw James's first birthday celebration at my parents' place last month. They insisted, even though I didn't want to. Mom remarked that being a part of his nephew's special day would mean a lot to Eric. In an attempt to maintain harmony, I accepted even though I should have known better. The celebration got off to a decent start. We used streamers and balloons to adorn the garden. James was enjoying himself greatly in the company of his loved ones. Up until lunchtime, everything was going smoothly. I was searching the crowd for Darla after stuffing my plate full of food. At that moment, it occurred. Eric was standing just behind me as I turned around and unintentionally ran into him. His new limited edition gaming t-shirt got some of my food, which was pasta with marinara sauce, on it. Since I understood that gaming gear can be pricey, I instantly apologized and offered to buy him a new shirt or even pay for dry cleaning. Eric flipped out rather than accept my apology. He began to yell that I always ruin everything for him as his face flushed. He cited instances from our early years when he claimed that I intentionally attempted to harm him, such as when I broke his game console by tripping over its wire. I was 12, he was 5, or when I received the last piece of pizza at his 10th birthday celebration. I hadn't eaten all day because I was helping set up his party. The room fell silent. We had everyone's attention. Eric gave me a forceful slap across the face before I could fight myself. The room was silent as the sound reverberated. My cheek ached, but the next thing that transpired hurt even more. My mother hurried over to fuss over Eric, not to see how I was doing. She began to inquire about his well-being and whether he required ice for his hand after he slapped me. As though I had done something wrong, my dad simply stood there with his arms crossed and gave me a disapproving look. I surveyed the space. James, who had begun to weep from the chaos, was being held by my wife, who was standing there in shock. While some people glanced away awkwardly, others murmured to each other. I stood there with a red mark on my cheek, and there was Eric, being comforted by our mother. I asked my parents whether they truly approved of their son being beaten at his own child's birthday celebration when I had finally found my voice. My mother's reaction? "You're older, you should know better. Look what you did to his new shirt. You know how much he loves his gaming merchandise, he's saved up for weeks to buy that." I lost it at that point. Years of repressed annoyance were released. I told them that throughout his life, they had allowed Eric to act in this way. They had never reprimanded him, encouraged him to improve, or held him responsible for anything. I brought up the fact that, at 28, he was still living at home and playing video games, when I had put a lot of effort into building my life since I was 18. I explained that Eric had a gaming tournament that day, thus they had missed my college graduation. How they were so preoccupied with making sure Eric didn't feel excluded that they hardly assisted with my wedding. How Eric felt uncomfortable around infants, thus they had only been to see James twice since he was born. If I couldn't respect my brother, my dad became irate and urged me to leave their home. That's exactly what I did. I told my wife we were going, scooped up my son, and left. "Look how upset Eric is now," was the reason my mother broke down in tears, not the fact that I was going. The calls and messages began to come in later that day. I had to apologize to Eric, my parents informed me over the phone. He apparently locked himself in his room and wouldn't go because he was so unhappy about his damaged shirt. Some family members called to let me know that I should have recognized Eric's sensitivity and refrained from provoking him by spilling food on him. According to other texts, I was being dramatic about a little slap, and should be more understanding because I'm the older brother. Eric, my parents, and the family members who stood up for him were all blocked by me. Some relatives who were present at the time of the incident expressed their support for me, stating that they had always seen how unfairly I was treated but had refrained from speaking out to prevent creating a scene. Too late, too little. Now, a month has passed. My wife completely agrees with my decision to cut off communication. She stated that she never wants James to believe that hitting people is acceptable or that he must put up with abuse because it originates from his family. Some family members claim that since Eric is my younger brother, I should forgive him and that I am being too harsh. However, I fail to see why, simply because we are related, I should continue to put up with mistreatment. First update: I haven't communicated with my family in 2 years. The absence of their incessant drama has brought tranquility to life. At 3 years old, James is doing well. In addition, we have a 6-month-old daughter named Emma. In addition to purchasing a larger home and receiving advancements at work, Darla and I have been content with our lives as a family of 4. Everything changed last week when I received a call from an unidentified number. My mother was crying uncontrollably. Her cries made it difficult for me to grasp what she was saying at first. I was shocked by what I heard when she eventually relaxed enough to talk. Eric was selling their house after somehow getting it transferred into his name. They had been given 2 weeks to vacate by him. There was nowhere for them to go. But the biggest shock wasn't even that. I was stunned to learn that the house had truly always been in my name. Mom says my grandfather left the house to me in his will when he died 15 years ago. I had just started college at the age of 20. Due to their own plans, my parents never disclosed this inheritance to me. In an attempt to persuade me to give the house to Eric when he was more stable, they had been waiting for the right time to tell me that they wanted Eric to ultimately own it. They resided in my house for 15 years without claiming it as their own. They allowed Eric to live there for free for 15 years while I worked several jobs to pay for my own place. While they saw me struggle to save for a down payment on my first home, they kept this a secret for 15 years. Mom started sobbing as she talked about how they never imagined Eric would turn on them in this way. He had been behaving oddly for several months, apparently. He had begun discussing moving to a different state to live with some buddies who played online games. They required funds for streaming equipment and a game setup. At that point, he began inquiring about who owned the residence. How Eric was able to get the house registered in his name is still a mystery to me. He took care of the paperwork during their trip last month, according to Mom, who kept saying it. I can only presume he falsified my signature because I never signed any transfer forms. The situation's irony is nearly comical. Since the house was genuinely mine, the same parents who evicted me from their home 2 years ago are now pleading with me for assistance. The brother who attacked me during my son's birthday celebration has now betrayed them by attempting to take my belongings. Mom talked on the phone for an hour about how they were going to be homeless and that they had nowhere else to go because they had spent all of their savings on Eric over the years, including paying for his failed college attempt, purchasing his gaming gear, paying for his insurance and car payments, and even paying for his convention attendance. She also disclosed that Eric's behavior worsened after I stopped communicating with him. He declared he was going to become a professional gamer and completely quit his job. He played games all day and streamed to his modest internet fan base at night. He would have tantrums, smash things, and threaten to move out when they suggested he look for a job. My father also picked up the phone. He attempted to defend their conduct by claiming that they just had their two sons' best interests in mind, that they had intended to ultimately notify me about the bequest, and that they never imagined Eric would act in such a way. He even went so far as to suggest that perhaps none of this would have occurred if I had kept in touch. Without saying anything, I hung up. I received more calls from different family members pleading with me to assist my parents. Some people made an effort to guilt-trip me by bringing up their advanced age and vulnerability. Others said I was being just as evil as Eric by not helping them. Darla believes that since they are still my parents and appear to sincerely regret their situation, we ought to assist them, but I find it difficult to sympathize. For 15 years, they misled me about my own property. While I put a lot of effort into purchasing my own home, they let their golden child to reside there for free. When he attacked me in front of my family, they stood up for him. The only reason they contacted me now was to ask for something. To find out how Eric was able to get the house in his name, I got in touch with a lawyer. The attorney attested to the fact that my grandfather's will did, in fact, leave me the house. Because I never signed any transfer forms, she is investigating the documents Eric used to transfer the property and concludes that his claim to the house would not stand up in court. She added that we could file a lawsuit against him for forgery. I'm unsure right now. Since my parents are still my parents in spite of everything, I have a part of me that wants to help them. However, I also believe that they deserve this because they deceived me and allowed Eric to continue doing so for so long. Perhaps this is the wake-up call they've been waiting for to realize the true nature of their beloved golden child. First update. Although it wasn't simple, my lawyer assisted me in regaining the residence. Yes, Eric had falsified my signature on a number of documents. Additionally, he falsely claimed to have my power of attorney while lying to other agencies. After nearly 3 months of legal proceedings, Eric has been evicted and the house is once again in my name. I gained additional knowledge regarding what truly transpired during the court processes. For months, Eric had been organizing this. He had discovered my grandfather's will while searching through our parents' old papers. He began looking into ways to transfer property ownership after realizing the house was legally mine. He even used a fictitious name to join some internet communities on real estate fraud. The quality of the fake documents was very high. According to my attorney, Eric ought to have had assistance from a property law expert. Later on, we discovered that he had been using money he borrowed from our parents to pay an internet consultant, claiming the money was for gaming equipment. Eric lost it all when the police arrived to evict him. He locked himself in his room and wouldn't leave. After hours of haggling, he eventually agreed to go when the door was threatened to be broken. He would not stop yelling that we were all out to destroy his life and that everyone was against him. I was urged by my parents to allow them to remain in the house. After obtaining my location from a family member, they arrived at my house and genuinely collapsed in the driveway. They have nowhere else to go, Mom said, sobbing. Dad was crying, something I had never seen him do before, and he was apologizing for keeping the truth about my inheritance a secret. They acknowledged that they had used up all of their retirement funds on Eric, including loans they had taken out to finance his gaming career, costly gaming settings, car payments, insurance, and the tuition for the 1 semester he attended college. They had genuinely thought that one day he would succeed as a streamer and repay them. At last, Dad acknowledged that they had overindulged Eric. He claimed that over the years, they had observed indications of his manipulative behavior but had consistently made excuses for him. They believed he would eventually mature and become responsible if they provided him with adequate time, resources, and support. Mom disclosed the ways in which Eric had deceived them on the house transfer. He had persuaded them that it was merely a formality to assist him in launching a gaming company. He assured them that after he became a successful streamer, he would look after them forever. They wanted to be sure their baby boy wouldn't turn on them, so they trusted him. Darla and I talked it over, and I agreed to let them stay under certain restrictions. In order to remind them that they are living in my home, they must first pay rent, which is not market rate because they are now on a fixed income. Second, if they wish to have any kind of contact with me or their grandchildren, they must go to family therapy. Third, without my express consent, they are never allowed to let Eric into the house. The eviction was not well received by Eric. He began threatening everyone, including Darla, our parents, and myself. He accused me of turning our parents against him and wrecking his life. Since it was his home, and he had nowhere else to go, he insisted that I allow him to return. I kept all of his threatening messages in case we needed them later, and I banned his number. Eric was couch surfing at his gaming pals' houses when I last heard from him. His ambitious intentions to move in with his online pals apparently fell through when they discovered he was broke. Since he is my brother, other family members advised me to assist him, but I declined. He attempted to use forgeries and fraud to steal my residence. In my opinion, he is no longer my brother. Third update. It has been an interesting 6 months. As agreed upon, my parents have been going to therapy and paying their rent on time. Although it's a gradual process, they are attempting to mend our friendship. There are fresh disclosures every week regarding the various ways in which their partiality harmed both of their boys. At last, Mom acknowledged that they felt bad for allowing Eric. It seems that they were having financial difficulties when Eric was born, so they were unable to provide him with the same luxuries that I enjoyed throughout my early years. They began to overindulge him in order to make up for it. What began as purchasing him additional toys evolved into a lifetime of condoning misbehavior. During one therapy session, Dad lost it when he saw how their behavior made Eric into an entitled monster and drove me away. He acknowledged that they secretly knew I would be all right because I was a responsible and diligent worker. They therefore gave Eric their whole attention because they believed he required greater support to thrive in life. Eric wrote me a long email last month. He asserted that he had also been going to therapy and had come to terms with his errors. He claims that after being evicted, he reached his lowest point. His streaming career never took off, and none of his gaming pals wanted to take him in permanently. He currently shares an apartment with 3 roommates and works at a warehouse. Eric apologized in the email for everything, trying to steal the house, faking my signature, and assaulting James on his birthday. He claimed that treatment enabled him to see how his perspective of the world had been distorted by his parents' partiality. He promised to pay the rent this time and asked if he may live with our parents again. I turned down his request. I sent the email to my attorney, who suggested that I stop communicating with him because of his track record of deceit and deception. Even though I inherited the house, I worked hard to obtain everything else in my life. Even if he says he has changed, I will no longer tolerate his behavior. I continue to face criticism from some family members for charging my elderly parents rent. They claim that I'm being unkind and that families ought to provide unpaid support to one another. However, this is about boundaries and consequences, not money. My parents only expressed regret when they wanted something from me, allowed my brother to be abused, and concealed my inheritance for 15 years. They're fortunate that I'm allowing them to remain at all. Mom still occasionally remarks about Eric's difficulties. She said last week that he might lose his car because he couldn't afford his car payment. I quickly put an end to that by telling her that he is an adult who attempted to defraud me out of my house. If they wish to, they can assist him, but not while residing in my home. Darla says we should ask them to dinner occasionally so they can see their grandchildren, but she believes I'm being fair. Every now and then, James inquires about his grandparents. I'm thinking about it, but I'm not yet prepared for frequent family get-togethers. The treachery is still too recent. This setup works for the time being. I have authority over my property, my parents have a secure place to live, and Eric is at last coming to terms with the repercussions of his behavior. Clear limits and punishments can sometimes improve family relationships. I've discovered that being family does not entail being exploited by others. It entails respecting one another's limits and being accountable to one another. The conclusion. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you. Update 1 year later, am I the asshole for not attending my dad's wedding to his affair partner? Original post. When I was 17, my mother was diagnosed with breast cancer. 2 years later she passed away. During these 2 years my dad was not around much. He was always working and going on business trips. My aunt and grandma took care of Mom. About 5 months after my mother's passing, my dad introduced me to his new girlfriend. I was pissed. I yelled at him how quickly he moved on from Mom when they decided to tell me they had been in a relationship for 3 years. My dad had been cheating on my mom while she was dying. His business trips were to meet his affair partner. I was so angry I packed my stuff and left his house. I haven't spoken to him since that day. Currently I am 25. The only family I speak to is an aunt who helped me when I left my dad's house. A few days ago my aunt called me, asked me how I was and then asked me if I heard from Dad. I said why would I hear from him again? My aunt said Dad is getting married to his affair partner and by going to his wedding it would help us mend our relationship. I said, why would I do that? He is dead to me? There was a silence on the phone for a bit before my dad replied asking if that was what I felt about him. I immediately cut the call when I heard his voice. I realized he was with my aunt when she made the call to me. I texted my aunt telling her I asked her not to tell Dad anything about me and she agreed back then. She texted me back saying I was an asshole for saying what I said and my dad is crushed hearing that and that I should move on by now. I did not want to argue with someone who helped me so I blocked her. Over the next 2 days, I got a wedding invitation to my mailbox. The only person in the family who knew my address was my aunt. And she gave my number to various members of the family. I am being bombarded with calls and texts from dad, uncles, cousins, aunts saying I should give him a chance and come to the wedding. Some called me names for saying what I said. I got a text from the affair partner saying my dad is thinking of postponing the wedding and I should just talk to him. For context, the affair partner was a friend of my mom and knew she had cancer. I said it's not my fault if he postpones the wedding. I don't want to have a relationship with dad or her. They are trying to force it. It got quiet after that, but being told by so many people from my dad's side I am an asshole did leave me conflicted, but I am sticking to my guns. So, AITA? Relevant comments. Your aunt violated your trust and the rest of your family needs to be cut off too. Yeah, I have blocked 39 numbers. But what my aunt did really made me sad. I genuinely thought she cared for me. It feels like there is a catch here for them to want to reach out now and not years ago. Actually, I thought about this too. And I think you may be right because I got some texts like, it's a son's duty to take care of his father and, your future kids would want their grandfather in their life. On safety. Thank you. I am in the process of changing my number and updating contacts. As for where I live, it's a pretty secure apartment. You can only come in after me or someone buzzes you in, then you have to write down your name with security and the elevator works with a key fob only. I am hoping that I don't have to move but keeping my options open if it escalates. Top comment. Chilled of Obama, NTA. Your dad cheated on your mom while she was dying, and now the whole family is upset. You've calmly expressed how you feel about it by A. Cutting your dad out, and B. Not attending the wedding. Your aunt also violated your trust by giving your contact information out without your consent. I'd say cut the whole family out at this point. OP is voted NTA mini update in comments. I sent a text to all 39 numbers who called or texted me detailing what dad did and blocked all of them. I don't care for their responses. Update post. Hello. First I want to thank all who commented on the first post and all who messaged me. It really helped me stick with my decision to not go to the wedding. I wanted to update earlier but it's been pretty hectic with work. So, after the many texts and calls from multiple family members, I sent a text to all the numbers detailing what dad did and why I chose to be no contact with him. I then blocked all the numbers. I have changed my number but kept the old number in a separate phone to collect evidence if they start to harass me from random numbers. But luckily nothing happened and I thought that was that. A week or so after that, my aunt's fiancé came to my apartment. He knew what time I got off work and was waiting for me in the parking lot. I was apprehensive but he assured me he only wanted to talk. And according to him the text I sent has caused a shitstorm in that family. He told me that some of the cousins who did not know what happened in the past started to question dad and affair partner and they started to get defensive and deny it, but someone revealed that it was true. This has caused a massive argument within the family with some cousins pulling out of the wedding. Dad wanted to postpone the wedding so he could talk to me but the affair partner threatened to leave him if he did that. The news of what dad and affair partner did also reached some of their friends who were at one point friends of my mom as well. Some of them have also pulled out of the wedding and this caused the affair partner to have a breakdown and started banning anyone who brings it up, family members included, from the wedding. According to my aunt's fiancé, she is blaming this all on me and says I did this intentionally. I laughed at that. The wedding is still somehow happening. I asked him about my aunt and how all this started and he said all he knows is that there was a conversation of how bad the family would look if I wasn't at the wedding and that my aunt offered to call me. He said that he disagreed, but she did it anyway. He said that he is only here because he felt I needed to know what happened. I thanked him but said I will be going completely no contact with her and by extension him as well. He agreed, wished me well and left. I am not going to lie and say I am completely okay. I miss my aunt. I miss my mom. But I know what I did was the right thing. I am currently staying with my girlfriend and she has been cheering me up by coming up with absurd ways to ruin the wedding. As a lot of you said, I should try therapy and I am going to take that advice. Some of the comments have made me realize that I have bottled up a lot of grief and anger. I am super nervous about it, but I also feel it'll do me good. So, once again, thank you for all your comments and advice. Ciao. Comment on girlfriend's ideas. The very first idea she came up with was, let's go to the landfill and catch some rays, then let's release them at the wedding. It got progressively worse from that. Obviously this is just for fun, and I have no intention of going anywhere near that wedding. But reading some of the ideas here is giving me a good laugh. Update 2. Hello, I don't know if I'm doing this right, but I logged in today and saw a lot of messages asking me what happened and how I'm doing. I wasn't sure if I should write this or if anyone would even see it because I don't know if I am doing it, but here it goes. For everyone asking what happened at the wedding, I don't know much. All I know is that they got married. No one from that family contacted me since then, and I didn't go asking around either. I am at peace with it. As for me, things are different now. First, I want to thank everyone who reached out and asked how I've been holding up. Your kindness means more than I can put into words. I'm getting better, slowly, though the journey hasn't been easy. A lot has changed since my last update. I'm single now and have moved to a new city. My ex, who I'll call Mia, and I separated about 4 months after my last post. We celebrated 2 years together in March and talked about our future. But I was a mess. Therapy started well, but I quickly realized just how many unresolved issues I had bottled up from losing my mom. I was struggling emotionally, crying at random, worrying for some fucked up thoughts that I might somehow turn into my dad, and spiraling with fears I couldn't control. Mia had dreams of marriage and kids, and I knew I wasn't in the right place to give her the future she deserved. It would have been very selfish of me to ask her to stay until I got better. We had a long, honest talk, lots of tears, and ultimately decided to part ways. It wasn't easy, but it was the best decision for both of us. Mia and I still cared for each other deeply, and she, along with my friends, checked on me every day after the breakup. I wasn't left to face things alone, and for that, I'm so grateful. In July, I was offered the chance to move to the head office of my company in another city. After discussing it with my therapist, I decided it would be a good opportunity to change my surroundings and start fresh. In September, I made the move. My best friend used 25 days of his 30-day holiday to help me pack, move, and settle in. I can't overstate how much that meant to me. I have incredible friends. Since then, I've been taking things one day at a time. The new office has been amazing. Everyone was so welcoming, which was a big relief since I'd been anxious about starting over somewhere new. I now attend online therapy sessions twice a week and grief counseling in person here. It's been helping a lot. I'm in a much better headspace than I was before, though I still don't feel ready to date again. For now, I'm focusing on my career and on continuing to heal. Once again, thank you to everyone who has supported me, whether through messages or just by caring enough to check in. It means the world. Now to the next story, story 2. I had an emergency C-section, and my husband wanted a divorce because he didn't witness the birth. Throw away because I want to fix this and I'm paranoid about more people in our lives finding out. It's all so fucked up already, I don't want more stress. My husband, 29 million, and I, 30 billion, have been married for 5 years. I gave birth to our first child in September, a girl. My husband was present for most of my labor, but things went very pear-shaped and I had to have an emergency C-section. The doctors told him to leave the room and wait outside. In short, he did not see our daughter be born. A week ago he informed me that he wants to divorce and start over on his dreams of having a family. He insists that he cannot bond with our daughter and says it's because he didn't see her being born. He said a lot about how it's always been a dream of his to have a small, close-knit family, and now he can't have that with me because of the C-section and his not being in the room. His dad suggested therapy, but husband refused, saying he knew it wouldn't work. I've made sure he knows I'm open to the idea if he changes his mind, but he's been very insistent that he knows this can't be fixed. Part of me knows I'm basically asking for a magic spell here, but does anyone have any ideas how, if this can be fixed? I'll try to answer any questions anyone may have. Sorry if the flare isn't correct, I just guessed. Update 1. I wanted to update and thank everyone who sympathized with me and tried to help. There isn't much new, but some things have happened. I can't link my first post here according to the rules, but these 2 posts are the only ones this throwaway has, so it should be easy to find. TLDR. I, 30NB, gave birth in September. Things went badly. I needed a C-section. Husband, 29M, did not see daughter be born. Husband insists that he can't bond with daughter and wants a divorce so he can start over on his dream of having a close-knit family. Several people suggested asking him to come with me to a therapist so I can get help understanding why he's leaving. He agreed and our appointment was yesterday. It didn't go badly, but it didn't go well either. He was very upfront with the therapist. He didn't try to mince words or refuse to answer questions. He told the man, paraphrasing, "They got to bond the entire pregnancy. That baby is made of their body. I can't compare to that. My work started at birth and I wasn't there, so I don't feel like I ever got hired, if that makes sense." Yeah, he compared it to not having an employment contract. I get the metaphor, I guess, but I'm not sure how it translates to him not being able to bond. Several people made transphobic comments and several other people asked if maybe my lack of gender was an issue. I assume no, because husband had known that I'm non-binary since before we started dating, but I did bring it up while we were with the therapist. Husband insists that no, it has nothing to do with anything. He didn't care about what I am but how I did. The therapist was very focused on trying to help me understand, and I appreciate that. No complaints with him. I'm still completely in the dark though, and husband has started talking about choosing a lawyer. He says he wants a clean break, before daughter gets too attached. TLDR 2. Situation is still fucked. I'm leaning towards letting him just go and focusing on me and daughter. Update 2, this is probably going to be long and it isn't a happy update. My other posts can be seen in my post history, but the short of it is that I, 30NB, gave birth to my daughter in September. My STB ex-husband, 29M, did not see her birth. Things went very badly and I needed emergency intervention. He was not in the room for the C-section. About a month and a half ago he informed me that he cannot bond with her because he did not see her be born, and he wants to divorce so he can start over on his dreams of a close-knit family. We have filed. I have taken daughter and moved back in with my parents, who aren't very happy about the divorce but are thrilled to have the chance to nanny daughter, their words, not mine. Life was in stasis for about a week after my last post until Mufael asked us to come over for dinner. He informed me that STBX had asked for his help paying for a lawyer. He had agreed with the requirement that we all sit down and have one last talk about the situation. He opened by saying that he thinks that getting this over with would be best for me and daughter. STBX looked a little hurt at this, so he's willing to help, but he wanted to take one last shot at fixing it. The one last shot ended up being several hours of talking. FIL bluntly demanded that STBX explain his reasoning. STBX repeated the can't bond thing. FIL asked why. The employment contract analogy was brought up again. After much back, forth, what do you mean by this? Why that? FIL just said, I'm not buying this. What's the real reason, STBX? STBX insisted till the end that what he'd been saying all along was his reasoning. He did not see daughter be born, so he can't bond. He tried. He insisted. The connection isn't there. He was supposed to connect when daughter was born. There was supposed to be a spark of connection between them, but that spark can only happen right at birth, I guess. In his mind he can't get it now. Phil asked if STBX thought daughter wasn't his. STBX insists he has no doubts he is daughter's biological father. FIL asked if STBX was seeing someone else. Was there a woman or another pregnancy somewhere? STBX did not react well to this. He threw his phone down on the table and said that we were free to search it. He's not a scumbag. After that the conversation turned to post-divorce life. STBX offered up that he'd been running the numbers and would volunteer $50 a month alimony and $50 a month in child support. He doesn't have to do either, mind, because we're divorcing and he wants to cut all ties with the kid, but he wants to be fair. $50 in alimony? Whatever, I have a job and a roof over our heads. I don't need it. $50 in child support? That is a lot less, whatever. But I'm refusing to stress about it. The court will handle CS amounts. I'm making myself not be angry and let them deal with it. I admit I tuned out most of the rest of FIL's attempt to talk sense into his son after that comment. I think that was when the coffin finally nailed itself shut. I started packing when we got home and went to my parents' house the next day. I'm no longer talking to STBX, his lawyer talks to mine. We haven't spoken in almost 3 weeks. I don't think I need to tell you that he hasn't shown any concern for daughter, but here I am anyway. The day after I got there my sister kidnapped me to her place. We got very drunk, daughter was with parents, not us. Talked about everything and I screamed a lot. I got most of it out of my system. After that we had more drinks and watched terrible horror movies. I woke up the next day with the headache from hell but otherwise feeling better than I had in a long time. My job can't transfer me, just my luck, but I've been promised a glowing reference and I'm cashing out what little paid leave I have left to add to my savings. Phil asked after the failed conversation if I would be cutting him off. I assured him that he might not see us as much because of how far away my parents live and not knowing where I'll end up, but he's not getting rid of me or daughter that easily. He was very happy to hear that. So that's where I am. Papers have been filed, Daughter and I have moved out of the house. I'm doing my best to ignore STBX's existence. Thank you all again for listening to me cry and complain over the past couple months. Update 3. I promised an update once things were over, and at this point they're mostly over, so here I am. My story can be seen in my post history, but the short of it is that my 31NB ex-husband, 29M, did not see my daughter's birth and decided that because he wasn't there he couldn't bond, so he and I are divorcing and he's going to start over. Daughter turned 1 this month. She landed on not as her first word. I suspect this is because Phil brought home a foster to adopt dog a few months back whose previous owners called her Nod or Nodder. Daughter loves the heck out of this dog, you guys. Phil sends me pictures of her every day to show to my daughter. Ex-husband and I are just waiting on some final paperwork for the divorce to be complete. He has not contested anything. He did look the judge in the face and repeat the whole "didn't see birth, can't bond" thing. His lawyer did try and defend that claim. He presented studies that he claimed said things about damages to bonds when fathers weren't present and actively involved for everything but ex-husbands was. He was there and active and involved my entire pregnancy, and was present for my entire labor until things went wrong. It wasn't a case of, ooh, hey, you knocked someone up 5 years ago, now bond with this kid. Daughter was definitely less than an hour old when he held her for the first time, probably less than half an hour. And I had proof for this claim too. Among other things, I had pictures of the two of us at multiple prenatal appointments. FEL was also willing to file a statement talking about how ex and he were involved in my pregnancy. Needless to say, the judge was not impressed with my ex's lawyer's arguments. He tried to push my ex for therapy, made comments about how ex would regret this later. Ex stood stubborn with his "I need to start over" line. He has visitation per the paperwork. Care to guess if he's used it? He does also have to pay child support. If you've read my post history, you might remember that he offered me a gigantic $50 a month. That's all he's been paying despite the judge ordering a lot more, so that's a fight I'm going to have to steel myself for. I'm surprised he started scanting out before the divorce was even final, but he did tell me in a FIL that he's not a scumbag, so in his mind he's probably just keeping true to his word or something. He's shown no interest in daughter. No other children, pregnancies or potential partners have popped up either. As best film can tell, ex is single and not showing any interest in dating yet. I don't know how I feel, really. It would make more sense if he was cheating. It would be easier to have something solid to point to, go, fuck you into a tornado for making my life fall apart, and then try to move on. But all lived evidence points to him honestly thinking he has to do this. I'm in therapy. I've found a place about the middle of my parents and FIL, and I'm still doing freelance work. I would rate myself okay. Daughter is happy, healthy and kicking. She will be fine. I plan to never speak to ex again once this paperwork is done. I just have to wait to be able to totally start over myself. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you. Am I the asshole for wanting to report my doctor, who is my sister's best friend, for telling her I'm on Vivance, a HIPAA violation? My oldest sister's lifelong best friend has been my doctor for a couple of years. Initially my doctor, Dr. A, was a colleague of hers from the same clinic, but after my doctor, Dr. A, was away on maternity leave, I temporarily switched to my sister's friend, Dr. B, as my primary physician, and it's been that way since the pandemic began and I never switched back. I have ADHD and get prescription meds for it and have been for a few years now, something I haven't shared with any of my family members for fear of backlash since I come from a long line of type A overachievers who don't believe in ADHD and write it off as laziness. A few days ago, my siblings and I were hanging out at my sister's house watching the Matthew Perry, Diane Sawyer episode where he shares his history with substance abuse, and I made a comment about how skinny he looked during one of the seasons of Friends. My sister then, out of nowhere, says to me, "Well, it started with prescription drugs, so I hope you don't get hooked." I was instantly gripped with a feeling of absolute horror. My other siblings were confused and looking at her for further clarification, but she didn't say anything more. I spent the whole night just frozen and with a deep pit in my stomach. Later, when I found some time alone with her, I had to pry the information out of her. She had just gotten back from a girls' ski trip, and when they were extremely drunk, her friend, my Dr. B, slipped up and mentioned that she saw me recently for an increase in my dosage and basically revealed to my sister that I have been taking prescription Vivance for a few years now. I'm so livid, feel utter betrayal, and have a strong urge to report her for breaking HIPAA regulations. My sister won't stop texting and calling me about it, literally all day long, begging me not to ruin her friend's life forever after years of hard work. She's obviously worried about losing her friend, but she couldn't care less about how disrespected I feel and how my privacy was violated. And more than anything, I worry that my sister will share it with my parents and my family will never look at me or my achievements the same. ETA. A little more info. I've known Dr. B my entire life, as long as my sister has. She was my sister's friend since they were in first grade, and they've remained close and we've hung out with our families on multiple occasions over the years. We've even gone on trips together, including my sister's bachelorette. I always looked up to her and found her cool growing up. She and my sister both have kids around the same age and they're close as well. She currently brings in the bigger chunk of the income in their family and they rely on it, and my sister keeps reminding me that I'm also ruining two innocent children's lives in the process, which is the only thing I feel guilty about. I adore those kids and they don't deserve that. But I also cannot get over how betrayed I feel. I always keep a safe distance between personal and professional relationships and would have never picked her to be my doctor had the circumstances not unfolded the way it did. She was the next best doctor and was the obvious choice because I wasn't really looking to switch to a new clinic during the pandemic. Relevant comments. OOP. On her sister's personality, Dr. B doesn't know what my sister told me yet. So far it's just been conversations between my sister and I. She's making it seem like they were so sloppy drunk that it was a slip-up and a complete one-time total accident, but I don't understand why that would even come up at all and don't believe that. My older sister flaunting sensitive info about my sibs and I is a tale as old as time. When we were kids, she would hold on to a secret she found out about one of us till the perfect moment and would thrive on dropping the bombshell to our parents during a road trip or in the interval of a great movie and ruin the entire thing. It was her thing and I fear she hasn't fully gotten over the habit as an adult. My older sister considers herself our parent too and has always narked or used stuff as leverage against us. I used to fear her growing up and would hide my journals at my friend's house because she would snoop. Definitely lacks empathy. Update 1. Thank you for all the advice and support on my original post. After reading the feedback, I reached out to a close lawyer friend for advice as well. And he, like most of you, agreed that I should report it and to do it without informing anyone else. He said it was better for me to do it sooner to have it on record. They prefer any complaint to be filed within 180 days of when you knew that the act or omission complained of occurred. 2 days after that I reported Dr. B to OCR for violating HIPAA and Patient Safety Act and breaching my fundamental right to health information privacy. I didn't tell my sister or anyone else, but a few days later, I saw my entire family when I went home for the holidays. I hadn't heard anything back yet on my complaint, so I wasn't sure if Dr. B was aware yet, let alone tell my sister that I had reported her, so I didn't say a word. Turns out that wasn't my biggest issue at that moment though. My sister had already told my parents that I was on an extremely high dose of controlled substances. I knew my parents wouldn't take this news well, but they were far more upset about it than I could have imagined. My dad doesn't believe in ADHD, and thinks it's merely an excuse for those that allow themselves to get easily distracted, especially since the age of social media. He even remarked that he noticed I was quite slow with my responses since dropping out of my chess club. Really absurd and offensive comments. I can't even remember a lot of it because I was frozen. I just sat there, nauseous and livid, with tears in my eyes, just listening to the three of them, my parents and sister, take turns going off at me. My mom wanted me to stop all medications immediately, that I'm better than this and smarter than this, and even threatened to tell your professors that you're on drugs if you leave us with no choice. But when she said that, it hit me. I had a choice. I could choose. I could choose to never have to deal with this again and to not let them treat me this way anymore. So I did. I chose to say nothing and allowed them to interpret my silence as agreeing and submitting to their ways, as I have done so many times before. And then I went to my room, chose to book a flight and pack up most of my stuff. My books would need buses of their own to be transported anywhere. The next morning, I chose to call an Uber a few hours before my flight, while they were still asleep, and flew back to my university. I chose me. In January, I found out that Dr. B had prior complaints from patients against her, and my report had opened an investigation that is currently ongoing. She's been placed on temporary leave till the case is resolved. I can't share more details on that for now, but I will come back and update once it's done. Relevant comments. Commenter 1. I also have ADHD and I studied neuroscience, partly because I wanted to understand. I also come from a family that thinks like OPs and I got the same BS from them all my life. We now finally come to be able to make ADHD visible in MRI scans. And predict the presence of symptoms with an accuracy of up to 80%. We can make visible the ways ADHD brains are different from normal brains, not in their structure but in the way they make use of it. We can see where our bodies use more oxygen and neurotransmitters, and ADHD brains are visibly different from normal ones in a way that is congruent with the symptoms. We can even tell apart the inattentive type and the hyperactive type with an accuracy of up to 75%. People who say ADHD patients are lazy and their symptoms are their own choices and character flaw are as ignorant and backwards as someone still believing the flu is caused by bad air or cancer is God's will. If this family is so smart, they are doing a really good job at remaining ignorant. With all the evidence out there, they have to really choose not to read and educate themselves and become advocates for their child and sibling, but instead actively avoid the newest scientific evidence that their opinion is stupid and they have been shitty people all along. It took me 30 years to make the step you made. Kudos on being so brave and mature while still being in college. I'm still trying to come to terms with self-doubt, imposter syndrome and depression. If you can afford it, do some therapy. Growing up in such a negative environment takes its toll even after you cut the ties. I'm proud of you. The hurdles to get to where you are today were huge and you did it all by yourself. Never forget that. Here's an article about it. This is just a small study in China, but they are happening everywhere and they all come to the same conclusion. I have tears in my eyes. I really needed to read every single thing you typed out here. I'm so tempted to send this to my family, but I don't want to interact with them right now, so I won't. I love science just as much as they do, and studying physics brings me so much purpose. I just know I need some help in staying ahead of my course and completing my assignments, and I'm finally okay with that. In the short time that I've been away from my family, I've felt so much more freedom in accepting who I am. That I am still smart and capable, and that I will still become a scientist, even if I do it my own way, and I am okay with the fact that my family doesn't approve of my choices. If they can't be bothered to listen to me, let alone attempt to learn anything about my diagnosis and try to be there for me, they aren't worth worrying over. I have spent far too much of my life doing that already. I have no more time or energy to give to that anymore. I'm channeling all of that towards me, achieving my goals and healing my trauma. Thank you for listening and for sharing. I'm so grateful for you. On her family. It's their whole image. We come from a long line of scientists and many of my family members have a PhD. And as far as I know, none of them have been officially diagnosed like I have, or maybe they struggled with it secretly, but their work ethic and achievements are everything to them and they would never reveal anything that would show otherwise. It's the way we were raised and I didn't know anything else for most of my life. Anyone who couldn't pay attention was distracted in their eyes. Nothing more. Commenter 2. Sad thing is, I get the feeling that you could show all of this to OP's family and it wouldn't make a bit of difference. It wouldn't. You are so right. I considered it for a second, but you are so very right. I was seriously so blind for years. All I wanted was to be good enough for them. Therapy is now making me realize so many things. It's so bittersweet. My heart aches. The worst part about going no contact with your sister, missing out on getting to hang out with your niece and nephew. March 30th, 2023, 3 weeks later. I don't know how many of you have actually gone NC with your family, especially to the extent that I have currently, but I'd love to hear any advice you might have. At this point, I don't have any form of communication with my parents and older sister and haven't since December. The most awful part about this whole thing is my inability to reach out to my young niece and nephew who I'm so close to. Every year I receive a Valentine's Day card from them and this year I got none. It's incredibly lonely and I don't wish this on anyone. I'm always wondering why they think I haven't called them. As much as I'm growing and healing from this, I'm also dealing with a lot of trauma and it's rough. Relevant comments. On learning about herself. I think it's so hard for me right now because for years so much of what mattered to me was getting approval and being good enough for my family. Especially since they're all overachievers and place a lot of value in academic excellence. And to feel no support from them at a time when I could really use it. I've never felt so alone and just out of place in this world. But I'm also learning a lot about myself and how codependent I was and relied too much on their opinions to ever even form strong ones of my own. So the bright side to this is figuring myself out. On losing her sister, I've been having an extremely hard time the last few days dealing with this. I am looking forward to when I can say my life is much healthier and happier without my sister. I know it will come, but right now, I'm just experiencing so much sadness as a younger sister who looked up to my sister so freaking much. All I wanted was to be good enough for her to be proud of me or think I was worthy of her time and attention. But I'm not, and coming to terms with that is brutal. Commenter 1. It really is like grieving the death of a loved one. Therapy helps, having support helps, and being kind to yourself helps. For me, a big issue was second-guessing myself. Maybe I'm blowing things out of proportion. I should just apologize again. Those thoughts were hard to get past. I'm having those exact thoughts. I am currently in therapy and it is not easy. It seems like so much of the affection I thought I felt from my family wasn't real at all and most of it in my head. Thank you for sharing with me. It might not seem like much, but it really does help to know there are others out there dealing with similar situations. It is so hard. Commenter 2. Could I make a suggestion to you? Create an email address for them. Something like I love my nephew at Gmail and I love niece at Gmail. Then email them every time you would have sent a card or reached out. Send emails that say, Happy Valentine's Day, I miss you guys. Hey, I saw pictures, or heard through the grapevine that you did this. That's awesome and I'm proud of you. This reminded me of you today and I wanted to share. I would have the first email to the account be this is what happened between your mom and dad and I and why I'm no contact. It was never about you guys and I'm always here when you're ready to contact me. Then when they're old enough to decide for themselves, maybe 18, maybe earlier or later depending on circumstances at that point, you can give them the password OAP. This is a wonderful idea and I might actually do this. It feels like a good way to express my feelings without bottling them all up. Thank you. OAP, on trusting herself. It feels so awful to know they don't really have your best interests at heart and it's a very raw kind of pain. But you are right, I do feel more confident in my decision as each day goes by and know I did the right thing. Update 2. Thank you to every single person that has commented, reached out via DM or shared any advice with me. My ADHD and current anxiety has me extremely overwhelmed, so please excuse me for not being able to respond to each of you individually. I get quite a few questions every day about any update with the case. I'm not sure how so many of you are still finding this post, but I really appreciate everything you've said to me to help me get through this. I'm sorry I can't answer any questions right now. Please know that once I have enough to share or any real information, I most certainly will, but for now, there isn't much. The only thing I can share is that I am currently working with an attorney well versed in HIPAA violations who is handling the matter on my behalf. We have received a notice regarding the outcome of the investigation from the OCR, which I am not allowed to share yet. I'm not sure if we, along with the other patients who faced breach of privacy from the same doctor, will be suing, because that's usually the most unlikely outcome since it almost always falls on the employers rather than the doctors. I've been told we might proceed with a civil claim. There's a lot of bureaucracy involved and it seems quite complicated, so I don't have a timeline on what to expect yet. I'm just grateful to have a lawyer that knows what they're doing. Thank you for your support. It's been the most hardest and lonely period of my life and your kind words helped me get through it. Relevant comments. Commenter 1. Hey, it sounds to be a good update so far. How did the situation with your family turn out? Did they contact you? I hope you're emotionally okay and have the time to heal. OP. My mom has tried to contact me a few times but I haven't answered. My dad and sister haven't. I have checked in with my other 2 siblings a few times, when I've just been so incredibly lonely that it feels like the world is ending. I am not emotionally okay at all. I'm going to therapy and getting help for it, but processing trauma is a very hard and painful process. I can't explain to you in words how it feels to have a stranger make you realize your family has never loved you at all. As much as my older sister was a bully to me, in some twisted way, she was my idol growing up and all I wanted was to make her proud of me. I never felt worthy of her time or attention back then and never did even as an adult with many achievements. And to know she would pick her friends in a heartbeat over me, it really was such a painful stab in my back. I know things will get better. I feel it in waves. I am finding confidence in little things every day. I just found out that my family cut me out of their insurance plan and I no longer have access to health coverage, including my prescription meds for ADHD or therapy, both of which I really need right now. What are my options? May 24, 2023, 1 month later. I'm a full-time student under the age of 26, and my health insurance so far has been included in my family's plan under dependent coverage extension. A few months ago I went NC with my family after they found out I was on prescription Vivans for my ADHD, something they absolutely do not believe in, and refuse to support me. 2 weeks ago, I found out that they have taken me off their health plan and have pretty much left me to fend for myself. I haven't been able to get my meds this month and it has been awful. Since I study full-time, my only means of income is a part-time TA job on campus, which is currently on hold since the semester has ended, and some tutoring I do during my very limited free time. I'm struggling and on the verge of a mental breakdown and could use any advice I can get. What options do I have to get some health coverage or any assistance whatsoever? Sorry if this has been hard to read, my eyes fill up with tears anytime I try to type this out. Relevant comments. Commenter 1. What QLE did they use to drop you? Is one not required on the marketplace plans to experience a life event to drop an enrollee mid-year? OP. Dependent no longer eligible because of full independence, is what I was told. I'm currently involved in an ongoing lawsuit due to a HIPAA breach by my doctor. It's caused a major rift between my family and me since the doctor is the best friend of my older sister. Hence the NC and probably why they did this. Commenter 2. You most likely will be able to get Medicaid. Do you have a local Department of Social Services you can go to? OP. Would I be able to qualify for Medicaid independently even though my family has a high disposable income? I'm financially independent but have been on their plan my whole life until last month. I've reached out to a few that were recommended by my university, but since my official address is out of state, where my parents are, I'm having to get those sorted first. Commenter 3. Make sure they're not claiming you as a dependent on their taxes still, but generally yes. It's not based on your family's income since you're not a minor and don't live with them. OP. I hadn't even considered this. I need to look up how to check if they're claiming me as a dependent. Thank you for pointing this out. My final update. Farewell and thank you for your support. I hope you read this. June 6, 2023, 2 weeks later. Hello everyone, I want to express my deepest gratitude to all of you who have reached out, offered advice or a safe space for me to be heard, and provided unwavering support during my time here. Your kindness has been a guiding light in what has been the absolute darkest time of my life. I was so incredibly lonely after making the difficult decision to go no contact with my family. However, amidst this awfully painful period that I wouldn't wish on anyone, I discovered a newfound sense of belonging provided by all of you compassionate strangers on Reddit. To those of you that were proud of me, I cried a long cry for every single time I read those words, and I will carry them with me till the very end. Science is my purpose here. I will rise again and hopefully help change this world for the better someday. As I embark on a healing journey, I've decided to take a step back from here. As someone navigating ADHD, I can sometimes become overwhelmed with feedback. Therapy has taught me the importance of focusing on my mental well-being, and given the financial challenges I'm facing and ongoing legal issues, I will be working 2 jobs to make ends meet and afford the healthcare and stability I need while I'm off from school. I cannot express how much your support has meant to me, but at this time, I must prioritize my responsibilities and take care of myself. Till I'm back, I want to leave you with a quote that resonates deeply within me. Pass on the kindness of strangers, for they have the power to mend the broken and inspire the lost. From the bottom of my heart, I thank you for becoming the family I needed when I felt most alone. May your lives be overflowing with happiness, love, and success. Take care. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you. Evicted by my parents, I secretly bought their house and tripled the rent to rewrite my own destiny. Things began to go downhill, or uphill, depending on your perspective. I worked part-time in a low-paying grocery store at 22 to finish my degree. Tom and Linda, my parents, pressured me like they owned my life. Every day, they pushed me toward their ideal life. They thought they knew best yet didn't know my wishes. I stealthily eat my mom's overcooked meatloaf at dinner on Thursdays. Though it felt like chewing cardboard, I didn't say anything for fear of a sermon on my ungratefulness. Dad abruptly asks, "How's that business degree?" In his usual concerned dad manner. Though preparing, I knew this talk would happen. My stomach fell as my heart raced. Rip off the bandage. I set my fork down, staring at the clump of peas I'd been pushing around my plate like a 5-year-old. About that, I shakily responded. I've contemplated changing majors. Room fell silent. The hallway clock ticked. Then I knew what was coming. Changing majors? My dad nearly gags on food. Only when angry would he glow scarlet. Yeah, I want to switch to computer science, I said, trying to communicate clearly. It felt like a firing squad. Before I finished, my mom answered sarcastically. Jake, thinking never been your strong suit, she joked, smiling tightly. We all knew it wasn't. She often jokes pretending to laugh. Sat there swallowing rage. I wanted to yell at them and tell them they were wrong, but I knew better. There would be more ranting, and I didn't want an argument. Dad continued. His fork shook the plates as it hit the table. Computer science, are you crazy? Business makes money. That foolish hobby is ruining your future. Tried to explain. It's not a pastime, Dad. Like it and think I can do well. You think? He disconnected again. Passion costs nothing, Jake. You're reckless. Think forward instead of doing what you want now. My mom agreed, feeding the fire. No more childhood. Don't play with your future. They didn't care about my wishes. As a project, any deviation from their design meant ruining it. Nobody considered that I might know what was best for me. After dinner, I collapsed on my bed after slamming the door. Like a burden on my chest. Calling Ashley on my phone. She alone understood my condition. How did it go? She asked, knowing the outcome. Like a freaking disaster, I murmured, rubbing my eyes. I told them, and they went berserk. Like I told them I was skipping off to join a circus. She responded by sighing. Jake, defend yourself, your life, not theirs. You owe nothing. Yes, but they're my parents. Not that easy. I get it, she muttered. But Jake, you're 22. No more childhood. Own your life or they'll run it for you. While staring at the ceiling, I realized she was right. I should act like a grown-up. The next morning, I felt dread and resolve as I informed them honestly that they could no longer dominate my life. My pulse raced as I went downstairs and discovered them watching TV in the living room. Mom, Dad, we need to talk, I said shakily but firmly. After my dad muted the TV, everybody looked at me like they expected big news, which it was. Switching to computer science. Dad frowned. You're not. I persisted this time. I chose this as an adult. I hoped they would give me it, but Mom stood up with her arms crossed. If you're an adult, you can support yourself, she said coldly. You have 24 hours to pack and leave. I was riveted, like my brain couldn't comprehend what she said. What? I succeeded? You can't be serious. My dad snaps. Oh, we're serious. You want to decide? Fine. You're doing it alone. I forget my walk back to my room, but I felt betrayed, like they were looking for an excuse to push me out. I was their son, but they treated me like garbage. I called my best friend Mike from my room without trying to talk well. I said, dude, they kicked me out, shaking my hands. I don't know what to do. Mike immediately said, pack your stuff, man. Stay with me. I discovered it while packing my clothing in a duffel bag. My parents threw me away like trash. Despite how bizarre it sounds, I felt relieved. They no longer controlled me. Not sure what that meant. I slept in Mike's house trying to figure out what happened after getting expelled, but it felt like my life had changed. From fighting with my parents about my major to being homeless felt unreal, like someone else was experiencing it. I didn't mind Mike's one-bedroom apartment that smelled like stale pizza and exercise socks because I had a roof and a friend who wouldn't ask me to leave. I couldn't crawl to my parents for help because it was too cramped. Every movement made Mike's old couch rattle where I slept. Every time I finished my homework, my mind would replay what happened. It seemed like my mind wouldn't let me forget I didn't have a home. My savings were draining fast, and I needed to work more. I couldn't balance 2 jobs, school, and life decisions. Ashley recommended we eat lunch at a cheap sandwich cafe near Mike's to relax after she couldn't fix my problem. As I hadn't eaten much since leaving home, I figured going out might help. How are you doing? She inquired, eating her sandwich. I shrugged. Honestly? Not good. I can't concentrate at school, and my money is running out. I doubt I can continue. She gave me the compassionate look everyone has given me since I told them what happened. Jake, you're trying. Just a blip. Joyless laughter. Yes, a mountain-sized bump. She held my hand across the table. You'll understand. You've always been brilliant, even if your parents don't know. Her kind words didn't change the fact that I was stuck in a situation I couldn't escape. I felt like I was treading water to avoid drowning. After lunch, I worked on my assignments at Mike's, but as I looked at the computer screen, I realized I was getting behind. My grades were decreasing, and I was considering dropping out. I didn't want to, but other options were running out. After several weeks of no improvement, my money fell, and I realized I had to choose. Mike could only cover so much, and I couldn't keep freeloading on him. Leaving college seemed like giving up all I'd worked for. Signing the paperwork in the dean's office made me feel like a failure. My aim of being the first in my family to graduate college was disappearing like everything else. After leaving that office, I realized I had no degree, strategy, or money. I gazed at my phone on Mike's couch that night, unsure what to do. Ashley always called to check on me. Now the plan? She whispered. I keep looking for work, but nothing comes through. Like every door is closing on me. My caller hesitated, clearly trying to cheer me up. You won't give up? I don't have a choice, I said, trying to speak clearly. Today I dropped out. Oh, Jake, she said. The end is not here. Find something. I know you will. I wanted to trust her but was losing hope. For days, I applied for every job I could find, but Sunnyside Restaurant, a decrepit restaurant that hadn't been cleaned since the 1980s, was the only one that offered anything. Flipping burgers and mopping floors was better than nothing since I needed money. I had something despite the long hours and minimal money. Earl, my manager, Barked directives like boot camp as I pounded grease-covered burgers on the grill. Maybe Earl witnessed my hard work. He was tough and only cared about money. After a month at the diner, Earl approached me during a break. "Nice work ethic, child. Want more hours?" My forehead was sweaty, so I wiped it off to look engaged. "My friend needs a better paying night guard at this downtown office building. You in?" No consideration required. "Yes, I'm in." Flipping burgers by day and guarding an empty building at night, though unglamorous, it was something. I stopped affording sleep and was exhausted most nights, barely able to open my eyes, but I had to survive. Ashley kept sending me links to tech internships to get me back on track, but I didn't have time or energy to apply. I live for survival now. Every night, as I sat in that dark, empty office building staring at the city's flashing lights, I wondered, how did my life become this way? A few months earlier, I had aspirations and a future. Now I was surviving one shift at a time. The worst part was seeing no way two jobs were hell. The cafe was filthy and the nights in that empty office building were mind-numbing. I lived in a beat-up knapsack, slept 4 hours a night, and sipped energy drinks like water. I was making money, not much, but enough to keep me going. Mike didn't say anything, but I think he was glad I could help with rent. I didn't want to be the guy freeloading off my closest friend as my life went apart, so I handed him everything. A random meet things changed quickly when this guy came in for lunch while flipping burgers at the diner. I don't know if it was chance or the universe providing me a break. First, I didn't notice, just another customer. He looked fatigued, like the rest of us who worked too many hours for inadequate pay. After supper, he paid at the counter and gazed at the computer screen behind the register as I gave him his change. I practiced coding on break to keep sharp. He asked casually but suspiciously, "You're into coding?" I nodded, trying not to look thrilled. "I taught myself. Hopefully it will be a career. I could have something for you. My organization requires entry-level IT professionals. Not fancy, but a start." I blinked, questioning what I heard. "Seriously?" "Yes." He shrugged. "Send me your resume, I'll represent you." I accepted his business card shaking, hoping for a bit of hope after months. That night, I ignored my double-shift exhaustion and started my laptop resume, which was imperfect but something. I wrote Mike before overthinking it and trying not to get hopeful. Turning point. After a few days, I believed he was being nice and I wouldn't be called. One afternoon, while working my night shift in that dreary, abandoned office building, my phone buzzed. It was a company email. I hesitated to open the screen before responding with an interview invitation. It was shocking to go from flipping burgers and guarding vacant buildings to perhaps working in IT. I rode the bus to work after stealing Mike's fine clothing and joining a modest, unassuming business that appeared like a new planet after a basic interview. Trevor from the diner greeted me at the door and introduced me to Tina, his supervisor. Tina was fierce but fair. I informed her I had self-taught coding and IT without a degree. She was first disappointed by my small efforts, but she then asked me to fix a technical issue promptly, which I had never done. I panicked, but then I remembered all those late evenings I spent training and coding challenges for fun. I exhaled slowly and worked, trying not to feel pressurized. After I finished, Tina nodded and gazed at Trevor without saying much. She said, "He's got potential, give him a shot." Despite feeling like my heart was ready to explode, I tried to stay cool. New beginning the following week, I started as an entry-level IT person. It wasn't glamorous, but I didn't care. For the first time in months, I wasn't selling burgers or guarding scary office buildings at 3 a.m. I was doing something I enjoyed for the first time in months, and Tina and Trevor patiently taught me and encouraged me to study. Not being held hand through everything was perfect. To prevent losing this opportunity, I worked at the startup all day and went to the diner or office at night. Sleep was rare, and most mornings I felt like a car had hit me. I couldn't have survived without Ashley, who gave me job leads and checked on the startup. She reminded me that I was building something for myself when I felt like I was falling apart. After months of beating, I broke. I couldn't work 2 jobs and be sane, so I quit. Earl was sad but understood. "Good luck, kid," he said earnestly. "You work hard. You'll be fine." It was amazing to leave the diner. I worked security nights when I wasn't at the business, but I wasn't burning out as fast. Over time, I dedicated every free moment to IT, acquiring new skills, performing projects, and absorbing knowledge. I was constructing something genuine, mine. I wondered if I was following a pipe dream, but every time I overcame a challenge or solved a problem that had stumped me for hours, that spark returned. Long missing fire. It took time for me to see my future again. I wanted my future, Not my parents. First time in years, that was enough. Some months into the new job, things felt different. Not bad, just different from what I had felt in a while. Finally doing something I liked. I wasn't going to a dead-end job. Code and fix it were fun, but not glamorous. Get something I worked hard for. Tina went to my workstation one afternoon while I was programming. I loved her directness. She said, "Jake, I've been following your work for months. You have promised yet are holding back." I glanced at her, shocked. Holding back? You mean what? She crossed her arms and looked like she knew the answer but wanted me to say it. You're talented, but you're cautious and adhere to familiarity. You lack risk-taking and pushing. Being comfortable is good, but comfort doesn't work in business. I was unclear what to say. She was right, I was doing the work, but not well. After everything, I was grateful to be stable and not mess up. Tina replied, "Look, Jake, you're good, but you need to improve to stand out. Try scary projects. You grow that way." I nodded, still understanding her words. This wasn't my parents' counsel to quit wasting my ability. This individual saw it and encouraged me. I followed her advice and volunteered for harder jobs I wasn't sure I could handle. I occasionally felt overwhelmed, but solving an issue was worth it. Tina handed me a big client job. I was scared since it was more responsibility than I'd ever had, but I was excited to prove I could do it. After weeks of late nights, weekends, and free time to perfect the project, I felt like I had run a marathon. I was exhausted, but I felt stronger. Several days later, Tina invited me into her office. I sat down, anxious about making a mistake. She acted swiftly. "Jake, your client liked your work. Every suggestion you made is being implemented." Unknowingly, I exhaled. "Really?" She nodded with a little smile. "You did great. Keep going and you'll succeed." Leave her office and I felt 10 feet tall. I thrived for the first time in forever and saw a future of building instead of scraping by. As I pushed harder, I understood how much I was holding back, not only in my career but in life. This cloud lifted, and I could see what I could do if I stopped afraid. Mistakes were inevitable, but they taught and progressed me. Ashley was always supportive, but she suddenly seemed proud of me. Instead of grumbling about my poor work or money, I'd talk about my new project or something fantastic I learned at dinner. She'd listen, really listen, like she could see I was on my way. After a long week at work, we sat on her couch one night. I was exhausted but happy. She smiled. She said, "I always knew you'd get here. Maybe not as planned, but you're doing it, you make it happen." I didn't know how to answer. She was with me through the worst, when I didn't know whether I'd make rent or where my next salary would come from. She made me feel safe and valued. Hearing her say that, I understood how lucky I was. "Thanks," I said forcefully. "I don't think I'd have made it this far without you." "You would have," she laughed, shaking her head. "A push was all you needed?" She may have been right, but her presence helped. Then things got better. I took on more duties and improved, and others noticed. Every time I finished one of Tina's harder assignments, I felt more confident. For the first time in years, I felt secure. I stopped security and wasn't making much money, but I wasn't afraid about my next meal. Tina summoned me into her office again one afternoon. I expected another extravagant project, but she had a serious look I hadn't seen before. She said, "Jake, I want to talk to you about your future here." Calmly but directly. Unsure of the direction, I arched an eyebrow. "Okay." She reclined in her chair. "You've done well in recent months. I think you're ready for more. I wish to make you full-time." After she started, I sat there trying to process it. Full-time? The dream? No more juggling jobs or scraping by. "I don't even know what to say," I smiled. "Smiled, just say yes." Yes, I did. After leaving that office, I felt lighter. All the strain, sleepless nights, and self-doubt were worth it. I arrived, though not as planned, and that felt good. Being promoted to full-time was like visiting a new planet. For the first time, I felt like I was doing something meaningful for myself and others without working a miserable side job. It was steady. After attaining that milestone, work got frantic. Tina meant it when she said I'd get additional responsibilities. I led teams for the first time and managed impossible deadlines on larger projects. My to-do list sometimes made me worry how I would do it all, but I had to. Every day was a challenge, but it was the kind that made me feel alive. It was significant to be trusted to do the job while still learning. Tina summoned me into her office again one afternoon. Every time she did, I felt like I was in school waiting to pass or fail a test. She looked serious, and I wondered if I'd done something wrong. She added, "Jake, I've got another project for you. pushing a folder over the desk. I took it and flipped through. The new customer was a big company modernizing its IT infrastructure. Bigger than anything I'd done before. My stomach flipped when excited and scared. "This is a lot," I said, trying to seem confident but not arrogant. "I think you're ready." Tina nods. "I need you to guide the organization through this major undertaking." "Guide it?" I was shocked. I worked hard, but heading a project looked advanced. I said, "I won't let you down," feeling her faith. "I know you won't," she said, smiling briefly. Next week was my busiest. I worked nights and weekends at work making sure everything was fine. My staff was excellent, but I couldn't let anyone down under pressure. Ashley was wonderful, although I was rarely around and a zombie. She brought takeout to work, sat with me, and reminded me to take breaks. "You're going to burn out if you don't slow down," she warned. I adored this idea and thought it would change my career and life if I succeeded. I had to prove myself, not Tina or the firm, that I could handle this. I barely slept the night before the client presentation, mentally double and triple checking everything to make sure there were no loose ends. I felt like all my tension and anxiety from the year had built up to this moment, and I was about to do something significant. The next morning, I entered the boardroom to find the clients in suits and ties looking serious. I put up my presentation to calm my nerves, but it seemed like my career hinged on this meeting. Tina sat at the head of the table, watching me. I breathed deeply, comforted myself, and started the lecture. I stumbled over a few words and slides, but I answered their questions, explained the idea, and showed why they required this update. During what seemed like an eternity, no one talked. They scanned the documentation and whispered. My stomach flipped, and I half expected them to take everything apart. The IT department chief said, "This looks good," nodding. "We'll proceed?" I was astonished and wanted to jump up and fist pump like a fool, but I nodded like it was just another day at work, yelling with joy. Tina took me aside after the meeting. "Great work," she said, beaming. "You've earned this." Her praise or the fact that I finished my largest assignment hit me harder. I felt like I'd passed an unseen finish line. After months of work, I left the office that night, relieved. I didn't care that I'd probably be back there in the morning working on something else. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was where I should be. On my way home, I excitedly called Ashley. "We did it, babe. The presentation was well received. We're proceeding?" Pride showed in her laughter. "You would, I knew. So proud of you, Jake." Hearing that made it real. I wasn't the lost, fearful kid who'd been kicked out of his parents' house. I'd built something for myself on my terms. There was less uncertainty about the future. I thrived, not just survived. And that feeling? It was all worth it. I went from struggling to excelling in IT a few years after that big job assignment, and I was surprised when I started my own firm. After working for a while, I had a good reputation, saved money, and made connections, so I was ready to jump. Starting my own business was hard. There were restless nights, countless paperwork, and constant worry that everything might fail. I felt this was my calling, so I kept going. I got contracts, built a small but solid crew, and the company took off. After 2 years, we made more money than I expected. I didn't serve burgers or protect vacant buildings. I grew my firm every month. I had built it. Ashley and I contemplated buying a house when my company took off. After years of renting, we wanted our own home. We looked at ads, attended weekend open houses, and fantasized about our ideal home. Seeing my boyhood house, which my parents still live in, for sale prevented me from surfing real estate sites. I was surprised to discover their house for sale. I hadn't spoken to them in years and didn't follow their life. I clicked on the advertisement to learn more. Their landlord had sold the property at a discount compared to surrounding homes. I suddenly had a crazy idea. Buy the house. Who buys their parents' house after eviction? It seemed petty, but I could, but they didn't know I had money or was considering buying a property. This could be my chance to reclaim control over a situation that had kept me powerless for years. I called my realtor and placed a bid without hesitation. It was inexpensive, and I had the money to accomplish it. A few weeks later, the purchase closed, and I acquired my childhood home. Now things get interesting. The property manager called me the day after the deal. "The tenants are asking to meet the new owner," said. "They want to discuss the rent and some issues they've been having." I grinned internally. Good things were coming. Not telling them, I told property management to make the appointment. The plan was in my brain. After parking my car in front and knocking like a landlord, Dad answered the door. He was surprised but didn't recognize me because we hadn't seen each other in years. I didn't appear like the guy who left their house with a duffel bag and no plan. "We're here to meet the landlord," he exclaimed. "That's me," I said, entering like I owned it. He blinks in amazement. "Wait, what? You're the landlord?" "Yeah," I said, trying not to laugh. "I bought the place." My mom came from the living room, wide-eyed. "Jake," she shouted. "Why are you here?" I smiled and leaned against the wall. "Well, I'm your landlord now." They were speechless, still absorbing the fact that the boy they kicked out years before owned their house. Though I wasn't celebrating, it seemed fair. Business was my obligation. I began. "So," breaking the awkward quiet. "About the rent." They stared at me unprepared. I stated, "I'm tripling it," calmly. Dad was stunned. "Triple it? You're kidding." I replied, "Oh, I'm dead serious. Property values have risen, so I need a reasonable return on my investment. Rent is rising. A lot." Mom shook and reasoned with me. "Jake, we can't afford that. You know we can't." I shrugged. "That's not my issue. You can pay the new rent or move. Up to you." Though tough, I wouldn't back down. Years ago, they kicked me out, so now I set the terms. The stunned couple may have realized they had no choice but to stand there with no credit and no options. I left after an awkward talk to let them figure things out. I drove away feeling satisfied, vindicated, and hollow. I proved them wrong and succeeded despite everything they did to me, but as I drove away from that house, I realized that rent hikes and property ownership couldn't fix it. This was about release, not revenge. I wouldn't lower rent. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you. Called off my wedding after my fiancé allowed kids but banned my daughter, blaming her for ruining our engagement party by being ill. Earlier this week, Addison, 40 degrees Fahrenheit, and I, 38 degrees male, were about to tie the knot, but I abruptly called it off. For the previous 3 years, we had been together. Everything was going well until we got engaged, which was around 6 months ago. When we started talking about who we wanted to invite to the wedding, things started to go south. Naturally, I wanted my daughter to be present because I have one. Addison, however, was very clear that she did not want any children present at the wedding. Given that she has 2 children of her own from a previous marriage and 6 nieces and nephews with whom she is very close, this was an odd position. Given that the majority of those we invited were also parents, I couldn't understand why she didn't want any children at the wedding. At first, we argued about it a lot, but I finally gave in. I grudgingly agreed to keep my daughter away from the wedding, provided she didn't invite any children from her side of the family. To put things in perspective, my daughter is 14 years old, so she is not even a little child. However, Addison was unaffected by that. She informed me that she wanted a stress-free wedding and that she didn't want any exceptions, even though she loved my daughter, her own children, and even her nieces and nephews. She said that by making exclusions, she didn't want to alienate anyone who had children. I was really angry about it, but I reasoned that because she had already made up her mind, there wasn't much I could do if she really wanted a wedding without children. The actual wedding was going to be small, just a few close friends and family would be coming, and we would be being married in my parents' backyard. I decided to let it go after reasoning that the kids wouldn't be missing out on much fun. Just a few days prior to the wedding, everything changed. Kate, Addison's younger sister, emailed me while I was at work. She was requesting approval for the email, which included pictures of her 2 daughters wearing wedding-appropriate attire. I was initially perplexed. Then I saw that Kate had sent the email to our shared wedding email address, which we had set up especially for vendor communications and RSVPs. It was too late when I realized it must have been an accident. I had previously viewed and captured a screenshot of the email. I tried to check the email again a few minutes later, but Addison had already erased it. I had finally figured out what was going on by that point. Addison had claimed that there would be no children at the wedding, but in reality, she was planning to invite her own children as well as relatives and nephews, but not my daughter. I was incensed at her dishonesty. That day, I didn't say anything as soon as I got home from work. I acted as though nothing was wrong. Addison was being a little odd at first, perhaps because she thought I had read the email and figured out what she was doing. However, Addison calmed down and resumed his typical behavior once I kept everything a secret. I knew she was planning something behind my back, and this was around 2 days before the wedding. I therefore made the decision to ask my daughter about her feelings on Addison. Even before I proposed, I had discussed this with her, but since I was really reconsidering the wedding, I felt it would be best to have another conversation. In retrospect, I'm really happy I took that choice. My daughter told me that Addison had always been kind to her prior to the engagement. But after that, something had changed. My daughter clarified that she hadn't brought it up sooner because she didn't want to spoil my happiness with Addison after witnessing it. Addison, however, had been acting strangely toward her after the engagement. Addison behaved completely differently when I wasn't there whenever she came to visit. My custody agreement states that I get to spend half the month with my daughter, which is a substantial amount of time. When I got home from work, my daughter claimed that Addison would activate the charm, but she ignored her the rest of the time. Prior to the engagement, this wasn't the case. It was unexpected and disheartening to hear this. My daughter also revealed that she thought Addison no longer wanted her in her life when she learned that he intended a wedding without children. She believed it wouldn't matter, so she didn't even try to go. I felt so bad about myself for letting Addison convince me not to invite my own kid to my wedding. I made the decision to call off the wedding at that point. I talked to Addison the day before the wedding. After that, I didn't bother returning home. Addison called me multiple times, but I didn't answer. I told my parents to inform her that I would meet her on the wedding day because I knew she would get in touch with them next. I stayed with my daughter all day instead of returning home. By the end of the day, we both felt much better. I spent the night at a hotel after dropping her off at her mother's house. I arrived at my parents' house the following morning, exactly 1 hour before the ceremony was set to start. A few people had already arrived when I got there, including Addison's dad and both of her sisters, Kate and Amelia. Naturally, all 6 of their children were present, along with Addison's 2 children, who were all under 12 and running around the area. Addison hurried to meet me at the door as soon as she noticed me. She started by saying that Kate and Amelia couldn't leave their children behind, despite her having informed them that the wedding was child-free. She went on to say that her parents thought it would be odd if she married without her own children being there. I could tell she thought I was crazy because she was making up all these absurd excuses. However, I remained silent until she had finished speaking. Then she began asking me strange questions like where I had been the night before and why I was dressed the way I was. I simply got out my phone, showed her a screenshot of the email that Kate had inadvertently sent to our joint wedding email account, and laughed in her face. That was sufficient to silence her. She realized right away that she had been apprehended and that she couldn't get away with it by talking. It was already too late when she began to apologize. I informed her that I had spent the day before with my daughter and discovered that she had been treating my daughter differently for the past few months, ever since we became engaged. I didn't even want an explanation or an answer at this point. I simply informed her that we were done. She clearly did not value my daughter, therefore I made it clear that I would not marry her. I had never treated her children any differently than I had my own, so it was very painful. However, I didn't believe it was a good idea for us to get married because it was obvious that she didn't really value my family or me. I spoke up and didn't wait for her to answer. I simply left. I didn't turn around even though she was shouting for me. I had nothing better to do, so I got into my car, drove to a hotel, and napped for a long time. My phone was inundated with texts when I got up at lunchtime. Addison's family was unhappy, and everyone who had been invited to the wedding was perplexed. However, I was unable to care. I gave my friends and family a quick rundown of the circumstances and then let it go. I visited my daughter later. I informed her that I intended to spend more time with her and that I had canceled the wedding. I acknowledged that, without even recognizing it, we had begun to drift apart during the previous few months. She used to come to me right away if she had a problem with someone, so I realized something was wrong. She hadn't spoken, though, with Addison. At least we were able to work things out even if we both were a little emotional. Speaking of Addison, that's where I've been having trouble. 5 days have passed since the day we were meant to tie the knot, and by now, almost everyone is aware of the reason I called off the wedding. Her dishonesty was just as much of a factor as the way she treated my daughter. Being dishonest is, in my opinion, a major deal breaker in any relationship. I've already been cheated on twice, and I can tell you that it always begins with a simple fib. She believed that she could get away with telling such a large falsehood. I don't believe that canceling the wedding at the last minute was incorrect on my part. Yes, it was sudden and rude, but considering that she had intended to surprise me with the kids at the last minute, I believe it was reasonable. Her family feels I'm being harsh and is angry that I didn't offer her an opportunity to clarify. Addison has been contacting me constantly, as has the rest of her family. Addison's only justification is that she had good reason to invite my kid, but she couldn't beg me not come. She also finds it quite offensive that I didn't think our relationship needed at least a chat before terminating it in that manner, even after we had been together for so long. She has stated that she will discuss her reasons in person, but she has not disclosed them. How she could possibly defend her decision to not invite my daughter to our wedding is beyond me. To the best of my knowledge, she and my daughter have never had any problems together. I still believe like I ought to have talked to her first though. I've been feeling guilty for the past few days, and I'm not sure why. I believe that rather than acting as though everything was all right up until the last minute, I ought to have been honest with her. I should have gone right home from work and addressed her the day I learned what she was planned. I could have prevented a lot of the drama that is going on now if I had done that. I've been bothered by the fact that I feel like a bit of a jerk for not handling things better. Am I the jerk for abruptly calling off the wedding and not talking to my fiancé? First update. 3 days have passed since I posted, and I'm still at the motel. I contacted Addison today and informed her that she needed to vacate the house right now. Since it was my house before she moved in, I believe it is only right that she must depart now that we are done. She has till the end of the month, in my opinion, to find a place. Since sleeping in a hotel isn't a practical long-term solution, I intend to crash with a buddy until then. I feel much better about my choice aside from that. My friends have encouraged me that, in the end, I made the decision to become a father because it is what I value most. I don't believe I have to apologize for putting my daughter first. People can avoid me if they have an issue with that. I don't give a damn about Addison's motivations. I don't think I need to hear them at all if she can't send me an explanation. I'm not interested in seeing her at the moment. Since it's obvious that her parents and sister were aware of her scheme the entire time and kept quiet about it, I've also barred them. I thought I got along well with her family, so this is disappointing. Before everything that transpired, I firmly believed that I had become a member of their family. I hadn't replied to Addison much up until last night, but I did advise her to begin searching for a new residence. I also informed her that she may text me to explain why she didn't want my kid to attend the wedding. But I also made it apparent that there was no turning back once the harm had been done. She has not responded to that message. I apologize to those who inquire, but I have no idea why she would be acting in such a different way around my kid. Since I'm genuinely interested, I've talked to my daughter extensively, but she too doesn't know. My daughter was as perplexed as I was when I showed her the messages and we talked about Addison's actions. She informed me that she was surprised when Addison began acting differently around her. In the early days following the engagement, my daughter even made an attempt to patch things up, but Addison remained aloof and uninterested in her attempts. Addison appears to be the issue here, based on what I've heard. Although I am aware that many children struggle to understand their parents' separation, my daughter is not one of those children, and she has no justification for lying about Addison. To begin with, I was never married to her mother. We dated for 2 years before splitting up when she was 3 years old. She hardly recalls our time together. For the last 5 years, my ex has also been married. I have no doubt that my daughter was not at all offended by my choice to move on and wed Addison. Until recently, they had a nice connection. I'm not claiming my kid is flawless, even though she may be in my opinion, but I do know she doesn't lie, especially when it comes to something like this. She is aware of how much I respect openness and truthfulness in my loved ones. When she claims that Addison began acting differently, I genuinely believe her. Nevertheless, I doubt Addison will reveal her motivations. I texted her a few hours ago, and she hasn't responded yet. She probably hasn't received my message because she works from home and must be on her phone all the time for her job. She always responds right away, so I'm certain she's ignoring me. However, it makes no difference. All I want is for her to leave my home so I may resume my comfortable life. I have to go back to work in a few days, and staying in this motel is strange. Second update. 3 days have passed since I sent Addison a text. She did respond earlier today. She claimed to understand why I didn't want to see her face to face, but she demanded that we do so she could give me an explanation for why she didn't want my daughter to attend the wedding. Despite the fact that we are no longer together, she said she didn't want me to misinterpret her. Addison said that her reasons were legitimate and that she didn't want me to think she was the villain. She said she didn't want to hurt me, so she lied. That reasoning was absurd because she still caused me pain. I responded in less than 30 minutes, being very clear that I would not be speaking with her face to face. Anything she said had to be sent via text, and that was the end of it. She said it was around an hour ago. She stated that something that occurred at the engagement party was the reason she didn't want my daughter to attend the wedding. Regretfully, my daughter wasn't feeling well on the day of the engagement celebration. I already knew she wouldn't be able to come when it was my turn to keep her for the month. Despite feeling ill, she insisted on going even though I told her she could stay in her room. She desired to join in the festivities. She went back upstairs to relax after spending a few minutes downstairs toasting with everyone. Although some people inquired about her well-being, it didn't cause a significant disturbance. Addison went upstairs to see how my daughter was doing, but he thought she had stolen our thunder. She was chatting and laughing on the phone with a friend. According to Addison, my daughter didn't appear ill at all. Addison, who tends to stir things up, talked to her sisters about her worries rather than to me or my daughter. After the engagement, Addison started to remove herself from my daughter because of this minor miscommunication, which unnecessarily escalated. Addison persuaded herself that my daughter will eventually cause issues because she wasn't thrilled with our marriage. That one small incident was the only source of this view. When Addison told me this, I was appalled, so I didn't even bother answering her reply. I questioned my daughter about Addison's words to put things in perspective. My daughter acknowledged that she was still feeling poorly that day, but she was conversing with a friend. Speaking with a friend was merely a means of self-distraction. It did not indicate that she was not ill. Addison's logic was utterly nonsensical. I think this episode provided Addison a reason to stop acting like she was being kind to my kid, even though I think she may have been insecure from the beginning. Looking back, I'm glad I didn't wed Addison. She would have undoubtedly caused further issues along the road. In hindsight, there were further warning signs. When my daughter was around, Addison would often remark that I didn't spend enough time with her. Ironically, I never voiced any complaints, and she frequently spent comparable amounts of time with her own children. Her behavior as a parent was admirable, in my opinion. When I think back on my earlier posts, I see that Addison was a major factor in my lack of time with my kid. She quietly took up all of my attention, both mentally and practically. I was so committed in our relationship at the time that I didn't realize it. It was too late before the warning signs were noticed. I'm relieved that I was able to end that relationship at last because I didn't want to remain with someone if it meant sacrificing my relationship with my daughter. I'm not really sure how to interpret that absurd message that Addison sent me today. It puzzled me that she destroyed our connection over something so trivial, something that might have been settled with a conversation, so for a long I thought about answering her and telling her precisely how I felt. However, I changed my mind since I didn't think it was worth the hassle. Until it's time for me to go back home, I would much rather ignore her. Unfortunately, since I need my job clothing, it might happen shortly. She needs a somewhere to stay soon, I hope. Although my friends have graciously allowed me to stay with them, I really simply want to return home. Update 3. I made this post 2 days ago. I returned home earlier today to get my clothes and other necessities. I was heading to a friend's apartment and decided to leave the hotel because it was becoming too costly. I made the decision to visit the house and get everything I required. I wasn't sure if Addison would be home because I banned her and didn't respond to her messages after she sent them. Regretfully, she was present when I got there in the afternoon. She obviously wanted to talk and appeared sad to see me. I began gathering my belongings as fast as I could, intending to be done and out of there before anyone could speak. I urged her to start looking for a place so I could move back in as I was ready to leave. She apologized profusely and followed me as I made my way to my car. She claimed she shouldn't have lied or made such a huge deal out of the engagement party event, and she acknowledged that she felt awful about what had transpired. She clarified that she recently got into a battle with her sisters after understanding how their advice had led to the breakdown of our relationship and that they had made it look like a much greater problem than it actually was. Addison pleaded for another chance, saying she would improve her connection with my daughter and me. Hearing her plea made me sad, but it was too late. When I got to my car, I informed her that although I could relate to her feelings, my kid was the most important thing to me. I had a duty to act morally toward my daughter. Addison was clearly about to cry, but I didn't want to deal with it. I drove off after saying a brief goodbye and reminding her to find another home. It was far more difficult to see her in person than it was to text her, even if I felt like a bit of a jerk for leaving like that. I don't regret anything though, it had to be done. I'm staying with a friend for the time being with the hopes that Addison will find somewhere else within the next few weeks. After she leaves, I can return home and carry on with my life, or whatever normal will be going forward. Although it may take some time to get over this, the bright side is that my relationship with my daughter is stronger than it has ever been. Our relationship has returned to its pre-engagement state. There are no secrets between us. She tells me everything about her life once more. Seeing her chat eagerly about her school day over our FaceTime today made it all worthwhile. In a few weeks, we even have a beach vacation planned. I think I could use the break, so I've invited some friends with children her age to come along. Although the last few weeks have been difficult, I have optimism for brighter times to come. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you. After my stepdaughter's passing, I found my husband and his ex-wife in our bed. I chose to cut all ties and start anew. Original post. My stepdaughter Becca, 14F, Died 4 weeks ago. I've been in her life since she was 7 years old. We were extremely close. My husband Derek, 40 million, his ex-wife Sam, 38 feet, and I, 35 feet, get along very well. There has never been an issue in the 7 years that I've been with Derek. Sam has always been kind to me. She didn't even care that Becca called me mom, too. Right after Becca's passing, Sam had so much anxiety and depression that she was unable to be by herself. She has no family besides us, so we invited her to stay with us. Sam hardly leaves the house. She mostly just sleeps in Becca's room, which is completely understandable. I always tell her that I'm here if she needs me and that I want her to take her time grieving and that there is no pressure to go back to her home. Today I needed to run some errands, so I asked Sam if she'd like to join me to get out of the house a little bit, but she declined and said she'd rather just stay at the house and sleep. I told Derek that I was leaving and that I would be back in 2-ish hours. He works from home. I also told him to check on Sam every once in a while, and maybe try getting her to eat something. After stopping at the post office, I realized I forgot my library book that I needed to return, so I went back home to get it. As soon as I walked in the door, I heard moaning coming from mine and Derek's bedroom. I immediately knew what was happening, and my heart completely broke at the moment. I wasn't completely sure what to do, but I ended up deciding to confront them, so I walked to the bedroom and opened the door and began yelling at them both. Sam started having an anxiety attack and ran to the bathroom while Derek kept apologizing profusely. I asked him what the hell was happening. He told me that he made himself and Sam some lunch and they began talking about Becca, and shared some memories. And then Sam ended up kissing him and he didn't pull back, and then it ended with them in our bed. They're begging me to understand that it was just grief that caused them to become intimate and that they both made a mistake. I don't know what to do. I love this man. And I love Sam. I'm heartbroken that they did this to me and put me in this position. I feel so stuck. Relevant comments. Great Championship 252. That would be hard for me. I understand grieving, but how is this excusing cheating? What happens next time he is sad? Edit. I misspoke when I said sad. Obviously this is something beyond devastating. I still don't think it can be used as an excuse. OP. I don't want to excuse his cheating. I think I want to divorce him, but I'm anxious about doing it right after we lost Becca. Spellbound mama, probably together. Do you both own the home? If it's in your name, change the locks. Stay strong and don't listen to his excuses. I am so sorry this happened to you during such a difficult time. Oh up. Exactly what I was thinking if I'm being honest. And yes, we both own it. When I told him to leave, he kept saying sorry and then said that he would leave and respect me wanting him gone for a while. Impulsive X thoughts. Are you seeing a therapist perhaps? You're dealing with a lot right now, it might be useful. OP. Yes, I am in therapy. I've been with my therapist for other things for the last 3 years. She's been very helpful. I saw her yesterday and was able to figure some things out. Update 1, May 11th, 2024. I decided that I'm filing for a divorce. I can't ever trust Derek again. It sucks because we had an amazing relationship, I thought. He's always been great, so this was a complete shock to me. Last night Derek came over to talk. He confessed a lot. Turns out it wasn't their first time having sex like most people thought. They've been having sex since 3 months before Becca died. I am completely shocked and heartbroken. Sam also reached out last night and thanked me for everything I've done for her, and told me she was sorry. I didn't respond. I blocked her. I did so much for Sam and considered her a friend, so this hurts a lot, more than I can handle. This is all too much. As hard as this is gonna be, I need to leave Derek and cut them both out of my life. I am ready to do so. I am done. Also, some people are saying I deserve this because I should have known better than to let Sam into our home, around Derek. But, you need to understand that I'm a giving person. I trust people more than I should. I truly thought Sam was an amazing person. I know it's unusual to become friends with your husband's ex-wife, but it's just how it went for us and I shouldn't be blamed for what happened. Thank you to everyone who commented nice things and for the kind messages. You've all been helpful during this insanely difficult time, I appreciate it. Relevant comments. Impulsive X thoughts. Out of curiosity, what are his excuses for cheating? Those two are going to be in a world of hurt, once the guilt settles in. They're going to be asking themselves why it had to be Becca and will eventually come to the conclusion that it's their punishment for what they've done to you. I can pretty much guarantee you that. Ope. He told me that they just accidentally reconnected one night when I was away at my mom's. He was stressed we weren't conceiving and were having miscarriages, so he vented to Sam, and then somehow that led to sex. It seems so icky to me. How can he vent about our struggles like that and then go and have sex with Sam? It's just awful of him. I don't understand it. Editor's note: remove the first half of the updates as it was a rehash of update number 1, update 2. May 13, 2024. I'm getting lots of questions about some things, so I figured I'd answer a few of them. Have I told anyone about what happened besides my mom? Yes, I told a few friends and some family members. Most of them are supportive of my decision and aren't speaking to Derek. Where is Derek staying? Currently, he's staying at a hotel. Our friends refuse to let him stay with them. He's lost a lot of people due to his awful decisions. Has he tried fighting me on getting a divorce? Yes, he begged me not to file for divorce, but when I told him I needed him to just let me go, and that I was too exhausted to fight him on this, he let it be and agreed to getting a divorce. Why isn't Derek staying with Sam? He told me he didn't want to continue to hurt me, so he told Sam he was done with her for good, and that they have no reason to speak to each other anymore. I have no idea if that'll last and if they'll just end up together, but I truly don't care what they do anymore. I just want peace. What was Derek's excuse for cheating? He told me that they just accidentally reconnected one night when I was away at my mom's. He was stressed we weren't conceiving and were having miscarriages, so he vented to Sam, and then somehow that led to sex. Disgusting of them both, I know. Feel free to ask anything else, and I'll try to answer. Thank you everyone for your support and advice. Relevant comments. OP on what happened to Becca. OP. It was very sudden. She died in a car accident when she was with one of her friends and her friend's parents. OOP on her husband's parents being supportive or not, and if they know about his cheating. OP. I get along with Derek's mom very well, but he's also a mama's boy, so it's kinda complicated. She will always be there for him. He'd stay with her if she didn't live across the country. She knows what he did and told me she had a talk with him but said that he's still her son and she'd help him with anything if he needed it. I'm thinking I need to cut her out of my life too, which makes me really sad because we were close and talked on the phone almost daily. OP on if she has children with her husband. OOP. We've had 6 miscarriages total. All of them were in the first trimester. NSBP. More updates, May 14, 2024. I just found out that he is staying with Sam and not at the hotel. He told me it's too expensive to stay at a hotel and Sam is the only one that'll help him right now. I had a feeling this would happen. Just knowing that they are still probably sleeping together hurts my heart. I talked to a lawyer this morning and we are proceeding with the divorce and Derek agreed to it. It's actually happening, and I feel some relief that he's not fighting me on this. My mom leaves on Sunday. I'm scared to be alone. But I go back to work on Monday, so I'm hoping it'll be a good distraction. I'll keep updating if anything else happens. Thank you everyone, I am so grateful for you all. Relevant comments. Immaculate 329. OP, how did you find out he was staying at his ex-wife's place? Anything he says should be taken with a grain of salt. He is not true to his words in going on contact with Sam. OP. He texted me this morning after we talked to lawyers, and said he just wants to be honest with me. I told him to stop giving me updates on what he's doing in his life and that it's not something I need to know. It seems like he wanted to tell me to hurt me. OP on how she is doing. EOP. Thank you. I'm doing a little better today. My mom and I went on some nature walks and went out into the garden this afternoon. That helped. Becca loved gardening with me, so it made me feel closer to her. Becca's diary. May 15, 2024, I decided to go through some of Becca's stuff today. I just found her diary in a box in the back of her closet. Would it be wrong to read some of it? I feel like it would help me feel closer to her, but part of me feels like it's wrong too. I haven't told Derek that I found it either, and I'm unsure if I should tell him. What would you do? Relevant comments. OP on if she was closer with Becca prior to her sudden passing. OP. Becca and I were very close. It felt like she told me anything and everything, but I honestly think all parents feel that way about their kids, so I'm kinda nervous to read it. Just a little update. May 19, 2024. I figured it's been a few days, so I should give a little update. My mom is leaving in a couple hours, so I'll be alone. I'm kinda nervous about it. She helped me stay distracted and kept me going. IDK how I'm gonna handle her being gone. I go back to work tomorrow, first day back since Becca passed away. I'm looking forward to it though because it'll keep me distracted. Also, I did read some of Becca's diary. It made me love her even more. She was such a sweetheart. I went back a few months and saw that she noticed some weird behavior between Derek and Sam. Didn't mention that she knew of the affair, but she just wrote that she thought it was kinda strange that they all three would hang out more than usual, without me. I might read more, but so far I haven't found anything that's disturbing, just her being a teenager and talking about crushes, fights with friends, happy family memories, etc. Tomorrow I'm also talking to my lawyer, so I might have more updates on that. Thanks for the continuous love and support, everyone. Last update for a while. May 26, 2024 started randomly getting a lot more messages, comments, so I figured I'd do another little last update. My first week back at work went great. I wasn't expecting it to go so well, but thankfully it did. My coworkers were so helpful and patient with me. On Friday night I decided I didn't want to stay home all weekend alone, so I decided to drive up to my mom's. It helps that I have a 3-day weekend so I can spend more time with her. I'm heading back home tomorrow. Also, for those of you that have messaged me hateful things for reading Becca's diary, I just have to say, you aren't in my shoes right now. Telling me I'm a bad mom because I'm reading her diary is just ridiculous. I learned so much more about her, about how caring and sweet she is, and it made me love her even more. It's how I'm able to feel so close to her right now, so please don't tell me I'm a bad parent for just trying to get by one of the hardest times of my life. You have no idea what it's like. I don't have much of an update, so this will be it. I'll come back and update once the divorce happens though. Thank you to those of you that have been nothing but kind and helpful. You helped me feel less alone. I'll forever be grateful. Sam saw my Reddit post and is threatening to sue me. June 1, 2024 Sam made a fake FB profile to message me and tell me she wants to sue me for telling strangers about what happened. Derek supports her apparently. I don't need this. Am I not allowed to vent about my life to people online? I just want life to get better. I'm so tired. Fuck you, Sam. Fuck you, Derek. Edit. Sam is in the comments and messaged me on here too. Blocked her. Additional information from OOP on the message from Sam. OOP. No, I just ignored her. It might be an empty threat just to make my life harder, but I'm unsure. Her message said, so I was scrolling TikTok and ended up on an account where they read Reddit posts, and guess whose post they read? Yours. First you tell friends and family and then you go to a bunch of strangers and tell them our life story? I can't believe you. It isn't just your business to tell. Becca would be so disappointed in you. Be prepared, cause I think I'm gonna be suing you for this. This was no one else's business. You did this to yourself, remember that? I'm actually baffled. She thinks Becca would be disappointed in me. WTF. I don't think I can do this anymore. June 11, 2024 I have been as strong as I can be, but I have been really struggling. So much is going on and I'm just so tired. How can I keep going? I just want to be with Becca. I miss her. I miss her smile. I miss her laugh. I miss how she'd try to make you laugh when you were sad by telling dad jokes. I miss how she liked being in the garden with me. I miss seeing all her new drawings. I miss her beautiful eyes. I miss everything about her. I just want her back. I need her back. Edit. I am okay. I just needed a space to vent. I was getting so many messages asking if I'm all right, and I just wanted to say thank you to those that reached out. I am okay. I will be okay. Some days are harder than others, but I think I'll get through this. I'm so grateful for the little community I have here. Thank you all so much. Sam took her life on June 20, 2024. July 4, 2024. Sam ended up taking her own life on June 20th. I am still trying to process everything. She had hurt me deeply, but this isn't something I wanted whatsoever. And Derek blames me. I feel so many things and I'm gonna be away for a while again, but I wanted to update you all. Thanks for the love, everyone. Comments OP on how she is doing after Becca's death and now Sam's passing. OP. I hope they're together again. And I hope they're both at peace too. That's all I hope for. Thank you. Taking a break from Reddit and going on a trip in a week. July 11, 2024. Well, I'm doing it. I'm taking the advice that so many of you had. I'm going on a trip since my job doesn't need me till the middle of August. I was so lucky I had my mom come stay with me a lot, and had my best friend come stay with me when my mom couldn't. But I felt like I was asking too much of them. So I decided that maybe traveling might actually be a good idea. In a week, I'm going to Norway. Becca and I always wanted to go there one day. It was on our bucket list. I'm actually excited. I'm also thinking of getting a pet when I come back. But might wait till I move. Thank you to those that recommended I do this. Becca would be happy I'm doing this. She'd be so frickin' thrilled for me. You probably won't hear from me for a while. I'm taking a long break from Reddit and all my social media. I think it's best for me. But just know, I love and appreciate all of you that have been there for me. I would have been so lost without some of you. Yours truly, Alyssa. A few updates. October 24, 2024. Hi everyone, I haven't been on here in so long. I got so many messages asking me to do an update, so here it is. Norway was absolutely breathtaking. I had so much fun and met some amazing people while I was there. I plan on returning in the future for sure. A couple weeks ago was the 6-month anniversary of Becca's death. It's been hard, but it's getting easier to live everyday life, but it also pains me to say that, because I feel guilty for moving on and healing. IDK, if that makes sense, maybe it does to those who have also lost someone close. I moved out of Derek and my house a month ago and got myself a cozy little house all to myself, and oh yeah, I got a dog. His name is Charlie and he's a darling little Cavalier Spaniel. He's been great, I absolutely love him. Also, I am awfully divorced as of last week. It was a very easy divorce and I'm so happy about that. But Derek didn't want any of Becca's things when we tried figuring out who gets what, he left it all to me. I tried hard to get him to take something because I feel like he'll regret it, but he said he didn't want anything, so I have all of Becca's stuff. I have no idea why he didn't want anything, but I have it all in the guest bedroom right now. I'm trying to figure out what to do with everything. Derek is apparently an alcoholic now and quit his job. He seems to be doing terribly. Besides all that, IDK, if I have anything else to share, I just want to say thank you again to all of my supporters. I've made some friends here and I am so thankful for you all. I appreciate every one of you. Top comments. Commenter 1. Alyssa, I think of you often and check back periodically for an update. I'm so happy to hear that your trip went well. Equally exciting to hear that you've moved on with your life, have a new house, and a dog. Cavaliers are so cute and sweet. Enjoy. Becca's things belong with to you. You will know how best to honor her. Wishing you the best life has to offer. Thank you so much for letting us know how you're doing. Commenter 2. I'm so happy you enjoyed Norway. I spent a summer there many moons ago when I was 17 years old. Lived with a host family in a tiny little town in the western fjords. It was amazing. I'm also glad to hear you are moving forward your life. You should definitely preserve Becca's things. I imagine Derek didn't want them BC. He intends to head down a path of self-destruction from which he may not come back. It's a shame he couldn't face his grief and find healthy ways to cope with the pain. If he had, he likely wouldn't have destroyed your marriage and played a part in the destruction of Sam. Last we heard from you, Derek was blaming you for Sam's death. Does he still blame you? Or is he too drunk to care anymore? Hold Becca in your heart and remember all the ways she was amazing. You may end up being the only one left to carry her memory into the future. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you. My family treats me like a doormat. Now, they are planning a cruise without me and assuming I'd stay behind to babysit their kids. They expected me to watch the kids while they had a good time, even though I, 25F, was not invited to the family cruise. Reddit, hello? Usually, I just read posts and marvel how families can be so cruel to one another. As it happens, I just received a story from my own family that is worth sharing. I need some perspective since for the past week, this has been weighing heavily on my chest. I'd like to introduce myself. I'm a 25-year-old single software developer for a big tech business in Seattle, and it seems like I've been made the family doormat. I got what most people would call a dream job 3 years ago after graduating from college. I've been advancing my career consistently, my work is rewarding and difficult, and my team respects me. However, in my family, I'm simply the one who can be counted on, the person who others turn to when they need assistance, particularly with childcare. Please understand that I adore my nieces and nephews. I've always been available for last-minute babysitting, crises, or any time someone needs a helping hand. Perhaps I erred by being overly approachable and eager to assist. The backstory is as follows. After 40 years of teaching, my 65-year-old Aunt Jean is retiring. She is essentially the matriarch of our family, keeping everyone in touch. She keeps track of all the birthdays, plans every holiday meal, and even sends care packages to the younger cousins when they attend college. She is what keeps us all together. She was the one who gave me care packages filled with my favorite snacks and handwritten encouraging letters during finals week when I was in college. She even assisted me in getting ready for my very first job interview. Her retirement is obviously a huge event, and I was thrilled to join in the celebration, or was, until I learned that I would not be participating. Everything began last week. I had just completed a particularly difficult project at work that involved coordinating a crucial system update and staying late to fulfill deadlines. Despite my fatigue, I continued to have dinner with my family once a week. Since I moved into my own apartment, these dinners have become a ritual, and even when I'm really busy with work, I hardly ever miss one. I brought Mom's favorite bottle of wine when I got to my folks' place. It was an ordinary evening, my sister Rachel, 32 degrees Fahrenheit, looking through her phone, my dad half watching a sporting event on TV, and my mom, 55 degrees Fahrenheit, worrying about what to make. Her 2-year-old was on the floor playing with blocks and would sometimes call out to everyone who passed. We were discussing a variety of topics, including Rachel's toddler's most recent developmental milestone, my most recent professional endeavor, and the customary family rumors. I then asked jokingly if anyone had any suggestions for Aunt Jean's retirement present. I had been considering getting her a unique present, perhaps organizing a collective present with the family. At that moment, Rachel said, "Oh, we're giving her a group gift on the cruise," without even raising her head from her phone. I stopped in the middle of my sentence. What kind of cruise? At first, I believed I had misheard her. I would be aware of any scheduled family vacation, wouldn't I? I mean, I attend every birthday party, holiday celebration, and family get-together. I chuckled uneasily and inquired about her topic. She raised her head, obviously perplexed that I was perplexed. "We've been organizing the cruise for months, you know." As if I were somehow to blame for not knowing about something that no one had thought to tell me, Rachel added, "All the adults in the family are going." I asked my mother for an explanation. When she realizes she's done something wrong but doesn't want to acknowledge it, she gives me this uneasy smile. She clarified. "It's a cruise to celebrate your aunt's retirement, with a few days spent in Hawaii." I had the impression that I was in a strange prank show at the time. I was in the dark about this elaborate excursion, while everyone else was aware of it. Suddenly, the space felt too warm and cramped. My heart was pounding as I struggled to comprehend what was going on. My mother gave me a tense little laugh when I inquired why I hadn't been informed, and then she said, "Well, we thought you'd be more help staying back." "Remaining behind? What can you help with?" I asked, attempting to speak steadily. I had the ideal opportunity to jump in as if it were the most apparent thing in the world when my cousin Madison, 30 degrees Fahrenheit, entered the room with her twins. "The children. It just made sense for you to stay and watch them since you get along so well with them. Let me explain. Madison and Rachel have 4 children under the age of 4. Madison's twins, who are just over a year old, and Rachel's 3 and 2-year-old children. They had somehow determined that I would be more than happy to stay behind and monitor them all without even consulting me. I forgot about my dinner and just stared at them in shock. "So you organized this entire trip without inviting me and just thought I'd be fine staying home to watch the kids?" Rachel finally put her phone down and shrugged. "Yes, indeed. You don't have children or anything that might bind you, and you're always so dependable. It simply made sense." "Made sense to whom?" I looked at my mother as I inquired, hoping for an explanation that wouldn't make me seem like a total afterthought. "We didn't mean to leave you out, honey," she added, smiling weakly at me. "We simply assumed you would comprehend. You have always been the one in charge." The word responsible was like a kick to the face. I've heard that a lot throughout my life, including when I stayed home to assist with family gatherings rather than going out with friends, when I rearranged my college schedule to accommodate Rachel's firstborn, and when I utilized my vacation time to support Madison following her challenging twin pregnancy. When someone needs assistance, I've always been the one to step up. Yes, I have assisted with school pickups, kept the kids during crises, and even filled in for Rachel when she had work-related issues. Rachel had a late meeting last month, so I took a half-day off work to pick up her children from daycare. After the twins began to crawl, I spent 3 weekends the previous month assisting Madison with organizing her home. However, this was really different. They made decisions for me as if my time, my desires, and my life didn't matter. They didn't even have the grace to ask. My mother attempted to patch things up by promising to bring me a memento, as if that would somehow make up for my exclusion. She promised to purchase you a lovely souvenir from Hawaii, as though it would make up for being treated like the family's unpaid babysitter. Meanwhile, Rachel pretended that I was exaggerating. "You wouldn't really like the cruise anyhow. I take it that you don't like big crowds? Do you recall how uneasy you felt at Cousin Katie's wedding?" Pardon me, as I spoke, I could feel my annoyance building. They were now determining what I would and wouldn't like. I was recuperating from the flu when that wedding took place 5 years ago. However, it seems that one incident had turned into a justification for them to keep me out of family gatherings. I sat there attempting to take it all in. This was intentional, not merely an oversight. They all know that I don't use Facebook, so I wasn't a part of the private Facebook group where they had been organizing this for months. They could have called, texted, or even casually brought it up at any of the numerous family get-togethers we've had, but they chose not to. My mother attempted to sidestep my comments about how painful it was to be left out. "We had no intention of upsetting you. It was simply useful, sensible for them." Soon after, I departed because I was too upset to continue the conversation. It was a blur on the way home. Recollections of all the times I had sacrificed everything for them, put their needs ahead of my own, and dropped everything to aid them kept coming back to me, making it difficult for me to concentrate on the road. However, as the days went by, the rage evolved into something more profound. It was more than just the journey. It has to do with how my family perceives me. I don't have any wants, goals, or desires of my own. Simply said, I'm the reliable one, the helper, and the person they can rely on to make sacrifices when it suits them. I've mentally rehearsed the exchange numerous times. I recalled spending the entire night with Rachel during the colic episode of her first child. How I assisted Madison in her quest for strollers and car seats that are suitable for twins. How I've never missed a child's birthday celebration or school function. As I gave it more attention, I came to the conclusion that this wasn't an isolated incident. They have always treated me in this manner. I didn't even realize how frequently my family took advantage of me because I was so ready to support and assist them. But I'm done this time. I'm not sure how I'll deal with this in the future, but I'm definitely not going to stay behind to watch the kids. Not now. Reddit, what are your thoughts? Have you ever found yourself in a comparable circumstance? I'll keep you informed as events develop. First update. Hello everyone. I appreciate all of your encouraging remarks in my earlier post. In the last few days, a lot has transpired, and I must disclose how things have gotten out of hand. I made the decision to make one final attempt to get on the trip after reading your remarks. In the hopes that we could arrange something, I texted my sister Rachel to inquire about going on the trip. Sorry, the cruise is sold out, was her irate reply. We made our reservation months ago, and adding individuals now is not possible. I informed her that I would be prepared to reserve my own cabin independently, even if it meant traveling to Hawaii on my own to meet them there or staying on a different deck. Even though I was still upset over being left out, I was making a sincere effort to be understanding. What did she say? Well, you would have to arrange childcare first if you did come. Everything has already been planned, presuming you will monitor the children. It dawned on me then that they never intended to include me. The explanation about daycare was simply that, an excuse. They had already determined that I would always be the babysitter in this household. I therefore made a choice. I had previously asked for time off for what they believed to be babysitting responsibilities. I choose to take the time off for myself rather than cancel it. A coworker recommended this lovely mountain cabin rental, which I found. It's quiet, remote, has hiking trails, and a hot tub with a view of a valley. I made the reservation right away, packed my things, and departed without informing anyone of my destination. Everything I needed was in the cabin. Just the sound of nature and complete solitude. No Wi-Fi, no cell service until in an emergency. Naturally, my phone was overflowing with texts the morning of their cruise departure before I finally shut it off. Mom. In an hour, we're heading out. When are we able to drop off the children? Rachel. Hey, we're taking the car seats to your apartment. Be prepared. Are you ignoring us? Asked Madison. We have to stick to our timetable, therefore this isn't humorous. Mom. Please answer your phone, honey, she said once again. Everyone is waiting. Then the messages became more obscene. Rachel. It's unbelievable how self-centered you are. Our flight is going to be delayed. Madison. This is utterly careless. We had faith in you. I raised you better than this, said Mom. The finest aspect? I had never really received confirmation from them that I would be watching the children. They simply believed that since I've always done it, I would. I'm currently sitting in this serene cottage and taking in the mountain sunset. I feel free for the first time in years, no obligations, no expectations, no last-minute crises to deal with. However, I am aware that this calm is fleeting. I haven't turned on my phone yet, and I can only picture the drama that will be there when I do. I feel bad for finally standing up for myself and upsetting the family dynamic, not for the children, whose care is ultimately the parent's duty. One commenter on my previous piece wrote, "They're not angry because you said no. And it's still on my mind." That struck close to home. They're upset because they can no longer control you. Am I mistaken for prioritizing myself at last? At the very least, should I have informed them that I wouldn't be available? It felt like the only way to let them know I'm serious after years of being taken for granted, even though I realize it wasn't the most mature thing to do. For the next week, I'll be at the cabin. I suppose I'll have to deal with whatever happens after that. Reddit, I appreciate you letting me vent. After I return and have addressed the fallout, I will provide another update. Second update. Hello, Reddit. It took me a while to take in everything that had transpired since my last update. I'm in dire need of some outside insight because things have become worse. Do you recall that quiet cabin I told you about? Those 7 days changed my life. I read books I had been intending to read for years in the afternoons, hiked misty trails in the mornings, and soaked in the hot tub under the stars at night. I felt what it was like to not be at someone's mercy for the first time in my adult life. I found myself thinking back on my relationship with my family while I was there. Rachel needed assistance moving houses last December, so I had to postpone a big certification exam that would have furthered my profession. That weekend, she said, no one else could help her. My siblings gave me plain gift cards, saying they were too busy to shop properly, while I used my entire Christmas bonus the month before to buy presents for all the kids. Madison argued that she had no one else to care for the twins, so I was unable to attend my closest friend's bachelorette party earlier last year. The pattern remained constant. Their demands came first, then mine. But when I got home, the real drama began. Do you recall how I shut down my phone? I had hundreds of voicemails, more than 100 text messages, and 47 missed calls waiting for me. It included everything from threats to guilt tripping. Do you realize we could have called the police for child abandonment? Was the most memorable message from my cousin Madison. They were meant to be your responsibility. What I was reading was unbelievable. You never agreed to watch children, so how can you leave them? I wanted to handle this ridiculous threat, so I contacted her back right away. When she answered, I exclaimed, "You can't be serious. If someone refuses to accept a responsibility, you cannot report them for it." She gave a frightening reaction. "You were the reason we had to postpone our entire trip. Are you aware of the amount of money we lost? You were meant to be with the children. Assumed to be? By whom?" I retorted. "I was never asked. You all made the decision for me." She continued talking about my responsibilities to my family and how I had failed them. She then revealed yet another shocking revelation. "I've already spoken with my legal pal. What you did can be regarded as careless." I lost it at that point. "Your lawyer buddy needs to advise you that before accusing someone of ignoring a duty, you must obtain their real consent. I have no formal authority to make medical choices for your children, and my apartment isn't even child-proofed. Have you considered that?" She ended the call. Then Rachel's flurry of messages arrived. It seems that she was so stressed that she was only able to enjoy half of the cruise and had to leave her children with a neighbor. She wrote, "You've ruined Aunt Jean's retirement celebration completely. You chose to be selfish, which affected everyone's trip. All of this came at an especially difficult time because, just last month, none of my family members were available to drive me home from a minor medical procedure. Madison was preoccupied with her daily schedule, and Rachel had an important hair appointment. In the end, I had to pay for a ride-sharing service." Although more subdued, my mother's strategy was just as deceptive. Presumably assuming I couldn't avoid her at work, she called me. Her voice was brimming with disappointment as she started, "Your sister had to cut her trip short. Madison's non-refundable reservations cost them hundreds of dollars. Do you truly want to be this person?" I inhaled deeply before answering. "Mom, is this more about what you all want me to be or about what I want to be?" "What is the intended meaning of that?" she inquired. "It indicates that I'm sick of being used as the family's unpaid babysitter. None of you even take into consideration the fact that I have my own life, work, and aspirations." She emphasized, "We are family. Families support one another. Mom, help is something that is freely given. You're referring to obligation here. In addition, when was the last time I received assistance from any member of this family?" The ensuing stillness was telling. The intriguing part, though, is that my sister chose to make this public. On Facebook, she has been making ambiguous and hostile status updates about toxic family members and others who don't respect family values. The irony is that our extended family members are making comments like, "Some people forget where they came from," and "blood is thicker than water." I was initially turned away from the family cruise by these same individuals. My cousin even went so far as to email me a detailed list of all the fees they incurred due to my selfish behavior, including additional daycare charges, travel changes, and cruise tickets. She is requesting that I pay them back because, presumably, their careless planning has made me financially liable. A friend of mine who is a legal, not simply a buddy who knows a lawyer, burst out laughing when I showed her these messages. She asserted, "They cannot force you to pay for plans you never accepted. None of this operates that way." I've learned a valuable lesson from the entire situation. This goes beyond childcare or a vacation. It involves years of abusing my kindness and using my time and effort as a resource to which they are legally entitled. I've always had some emergency that needed my attention whenever I've attempted to plan for myself. Rachel had joined a book club, so last spring when I wanted to take a photography class, I ended up spending those evenings watching the kids. This summer, Madison needed assistance with the twins when her husband was gone on business, so I had to postpone our planned weekend getaway with friends. To help me deal with all of this, I've started going to a therapist. She noted that my family's response, the threats, the humiliation in front of others, and the financial demands, are all indications that someone they're used to controlling is losing control. Aunt Jean has been the sole bright point in all of this. I was moved to tears by her remarks when she called me yesterday. I had no idea they excluded you like this. I would have stopped it right away if I had known. Family isn't meant to be like this. However, even her encouragement cannot make up for the hurt I feel when I realize how my family truly views me. I'm their safety net, their backup plan, and their free babysitting service, not their sister, daughter, or cousin. Going forward, I know I must establish clear boundaries, but I'm having trouble figuring out what those boundaries should entail. There's a part of me that wants to stop communicating altogether, at least temporarily. Even thinking about that makes another area feel bad. Reddit, what are your thoughts? With family members that don't even grasp the idea of boundaries, how can you set them? Have any of you had a similar situation? Third update. This will be my last update on the situation. Reddit. In light of the trip and the turmoil that followed, I've had to make some tough but essential choices regarding my relationship with my family going forward. These last few weeks have been life-changing. Now that I'm not always on call for family problems, my professional life has dramatically transformed. I am now in charge of a significant project. Last week, my manager even took me aside and remarked, "You seem like a completely different person. Your energy and focus have significantly increased." Until they were gone, I was unaware of how much my family responsibilities were impeding my career. I finally had the chat I had been dreading last night. I gave my mother a call. Since I still adore her in spite of everything, I knew she would be the most difficult to deal with. However, love is insufficient to excuse their treatment of me. Her voice was instantly eager as she responded. "I'm so happy you phoned, honey. Let's move on from this, shall we? I want to stop fighting now." I said in a firm voice, "Mom, this isn't a fight. This is my way of telling you that I need a lot of space." "What is meant by that?" Her voice changed from one of hope to one of worry. "It implies that I can't continue in this manner. I can't be a part of a family that doesn't respect me, even though I love you. Whenever I attempt to defend myself, I encounter manipulation, accusations, and guilt tripping." A few weeks ago, I would have been devastated when she began to cry. "So what? Are you simply going to leave me? From your sister? From everybody?" "Yes, if that's what it takes to keep my peace." From there, the discussion took a turn for the worse. She employed all of her strategies, including money manipulation. "Remember who helped with your first apartment deposit? Guilt about the children. They ask about their aunt every day, and even bringing up dad's health. This stress isn't good for his heart." The most painful part was when she mentioned my early years. She said, "I gave up everything for you. To raise you, I put my career on hold." I didn't miss the irony of her exploiting her own decisions to blame me for mine. But I held my ground for the first time. I clarified that although I would continue to send birthday cards to the children, I would require total separation from the family's adults for the foreseeable future. "What is the foreseeable future duration?" she insisted. "For however long it takes for me to recover and for everyone to realize that I'm more than just the family's babysitter." She ended the call. Instead of feeling sad as I had anticipated, I felt lighter. I adopted a more straightforward strategy with my sister and cousin. I disabled their social media profiles and phone numbers. I went through all of the family group conversations on my phone and unsubscribed. In addition to unfollowing them on social media, I modified my email filters so that their messages are sent to a different folder that I may review whenever I'm ready. There has been a noticeable shift in my day-to-day existence. I used to be so worried about missing an emergency call from my sister or cousin that I would continuously check my phone. My phone isn't tied to incessant demands from my family anymore. It's just a phone. I've begun taking back my weekends. I joined a local hiking club last Saturday to tackle a strenuous trail that I've always wanted to experience. I spent 6 hours going to a stunning top with like-minded individuals rather than watching my nieces and nephews. Next weekend, we intend to go hiking again. The class I mentioned on photography? Everything is going remarkably well. I have a natural eye for composition, according to my instructor, and I'm already organizing a picture show with several of my classmates for the spring of next year. When I was at everyone's mercy, I would never have had the chance to take advantage of these kinds of possibilities. Additionally, I've resumed dating, which was previously nearly difficult. It's incredible how much more appealing you seem to possible partners when you don't have to keep postponing arrangements to deal with family crises. Aunt Jean is the only person I continue to communicate with. She confirmed everything I've been feeling when she contacted me this morning. She added that she had experienced a similar situation with her own sister years prior, which helped me feel less alone in this choice. Walking away from people who don't value you, even if they are family, is sometimes the strongest thing you can do. I've learned from my therapist that this is about taking back my identity, not just about establishing boundaries. I've spent so much time being the family helper, the responsible one, and the dependable one. Now, I'm free to discover who I am without those titles. Yes, there are times when I miss them, like when I walk past my niece's favorite park or see something that would make them laugh. The cruise situation, however, comes to mind, as they were prepared to deny me a family celebration while still requiring me to give up my time for their convenience. Before, I never felt comfortable starting a 5-year plan for myself. I'm considering working part-time while pursuing my master's degree. My manager is very supportive of the tuition reimbursement program offered by my company. In addition, I'm saving for that springtime vacation to Europe by myself, which would not have been feasible when I was continuously devoting my time and resources to family responsibilities. My mental health has changed in the most unexpected way. I no longer experience the same level of continual anxiousness. I eat healthier, sleep better, and have even begun working out on a regular basis. You have an incredible amount of energy when you're not always running other people's lives. In response to inquiries in my previous post, I can confirm that I am still employed and have accepted a team lead position on a new project. My coworkers have seen how I've changed. "You smile more now," one of them remarked. I was unaware of how obvious my attention had been to other people. Cutting off my family in this way may seem harsh to some of you. Perhaps I am. However, this seems to be the only option after years of being neglected, having my needs and wants disregarded, and being treated more like a service than a human being. I have no idea what the future will bring. They might realize why I had to do this at some point. They might not. However, I'm prioritizing myself for the first time in my adult life, and it feels good. I appreciate all of your help along the way, Reddit. Your feedback and personal stories gave me the courage to make this choice. I'm ready to conclude this chapter and concentrate on creating my own novel, so this will be my final update. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you. Parents funded siblings, ignored me. I built my own success, uncovered their betrayal, and chose a new family over being the forgotten child. Hello, Reddit. I need to talk about something today. I'm 27 years old. I suppose you could say that I've been the one ignored my entire life. My younger brother Chris, 25 million, and older sister Sarah, 29 feet, are my siblings. It would be an understatement to suggest that they were always the golden children. In my parents' view, they could never do anything wrong, but I was just there. Sarah excelled academically as a child, consistently receiving straight A's and participating in all school-related activities before attending a prestigious Ivy League university. It was my parents' obsession. They couldn't stop raving about how delighted they were the moment she received her admission letter, I promise. They invited all of her relatives and friends to this lavish celebration party. We felt as though we were celebrating Sarah's academic achievement with a second Christmas. Chris, however, didn't have to make a concerted effort. For him, everything just appeared to go smoothly. Following Sarah's example, he enrolled in a prestigious graduate program. My parents also ensured that everything was prepared for him. They purchased him a new laptop, helped him move, paid his tuition, and more. Then there was me. I attended a state college instead of an Ivy League school. Although it was a fine school, I had the impression that my parents wouldn't boast about it the way they did about Chris and Sarah. They kind of nodded and muttered something like, "That's great, Michael," when I informed them I had been accepted, but I could tell they weren't really into it. No party, no celebration. If we ordered takeaway that night, I was lucky. I made an effort to ignore it, but as I grew older, I became more aware of how different things were for me than for them. The money was just as important as the attention. Consider the wedding of Sarah. $200,000 is no laughing matter. The setting, the catering, the dress, my parents went all out. They handled it like it was the biggest thing ever. Some members of our family were even flown in from out of state. They covered all of Chris's graduate school expenses and provided him with rent assistance until he was able to support himself. They also took care of his educational loans, so he didn't even need to worry about those. But me? I asked my parents for assistance when I was just starting out in my job and required some work-related tools, things that were necessary to even get started. I received $7,000. Please understand that $7,000 is a substantial sum of money, However, it kind of hurts when you contrast that with $200,000 for a wedding or fully covering someone's tuition. I felt like I was only receiving the bare minimum so they could claim to have been helpful. And it wasn't just the cash. I always felt like the odd one out whenever our family gathered together. Every discourse at family dinners revolved around Chris's most recent accomplishment or Sarah's fancy job. As they sat there, they would discuss their upcoming extravagant plans, vacations, or improvements to their homes. I would be sitting there consuming my meal while attempting to come up with anything to add to the discussion. What was I going to say though, really? It seemed like my accomplishments paled in comparison to what they were doing. Hey, I just finished a big project at work, and I'm still paying off my car. One dinner in particular, perhaps a year ago, comes to mind. As was customary, the topic of conversation shifted to Sarah's most recent travel plans as we were all seated around the table. "Oh, we're going to Europe for a few weeks," she revealed nonchalantly as she sipped her drink. "It's just so nice that Mom and Dad are able to help out with the expenses." Chris added his voice as well, discussing some of the wedding expenses that were paid for. In a casual tone, he remarked, "I honestly don't know what we would have done without that $200,000. Emily immediately burst out laughing, saying, "Thanks to our parents covering everything," expressing her relief that the tuition hikes had no effect on her. They seemed to be hammering their words into my head as I sat there attempting to concentrate on my plate. It wasn't just the money, I had to work for my advancement and take out loans to make ends meet, whereas they had their futures handed to them. They pretended not to have to worry about it, but every dollar seemed like a fight. The worst thing? I wasn't even included in the discourse, yet nobody appeared to notice. My face became hot, my hands clenched beneath the table, and I could feel my irritation mounting until I was unable to contain it any longer. I whispered something to me. "Must be nice." There was silence in the room, everyone was watching me. It was Sarah who spoke first. With a confused and annoyed expression on her face, as if she couldn't even begin to comprehend why I was unhappy, she questioned, "What's that supposed to mean, Michael?" I inhaled deeply while attempting to remain composed, but everything spilled out quickly. "It means that not all of us get everything handed to us on a silver platter. Some of us actually have to work for what we need." They clearly didn't understand. As if it were no great issue, Chris simply shrugged and relaxed back in his chair. He smiled smugly and added, "Michael, you're always acting like you're the victim. Didn't Mom and Dad help you get those tools for work?" That struck a chord. Even though they gave me $7,000, it seems insignificant in comparison to what they have done for Chris and Sarah. I said, "Yeah, they helped, firmly. But $7,000 compared to hundreds of thousands? It's not the same, and you know it." As usual, Mom tried to defuse the situation. "Michael, we thought that's what you needed. We've always tried to give you what was fair." "Fair?" I asked, my voice bursting with resentment. "You think this is fair? You've given them everything. You've practically paved their roads for them, and I've had to build mine brick by brick." From there, the discussion took a turn for the worst. Everyone made an effort to justify themselves and claim that I was exaggerating. Dad shook his head and remarked, "You're exaggerating this?" "No," I replied, "you gave me the minimum. That's the part that hurts the most. You didn't care about what I wanted, only what you thought was enough to keep me quiet. It was more than I could handle." Without saying another word, I got up and walked out of the room, my chair making a loud scraping sound against the floor. I didn't turn around, but their voices followed me as I left the room. I was tired of constantly getting the leftovers and being the one who was forgotten. That night, I was furious and stormed out of the house. I don't believe I've ever been that angry. My heart was thumping in my chest, like if it were trying to escape. It seemed like the world was closing in on me with each step I took down the driveway. I had no idea where I was heading. I simply knew that I had to leave, far away. It was late, maybe around 10 o'clock, and there was silence on the streets. You know that spooky silence where everything seems a little too motionless? Yes, that was it. As I went, the only sound was the sound of my sneakers hitting the pavement. I wasn't in the mood for distractions, so I didn't have my phone out or my headphones on. I had to think. I kept thinking about the supper while I was walking, Chris's arrogant expression, Sarah's patronizing inquiries. They all seemed to be living in a bubble of privilege and were unaware of how oppressive it was for me. I was merely an outsider with a window into their lovely little world. My frustration grew as I gave it more attention. Why didn't I say more was a question I kept asking myself. Why didn't I actually give it to them? However, I later came to the realization that my words would have had no impact. Talking to a brick wall was like that. I had my version of what happened, and they had theirs, and the two were never going to coincide. I eventually made my way to the park where I used to spend my childhood. The residence was only a 15-minute walk away. Some trees kind of obscured an old bench and a spot next to the playground. It was one of those locations you travel to when you simply need to escape from everything, and I needed that. I took a seat and simply gazed up at the sky while leaning back against the chilly wood. On this particular clear night, all the stars were visible. It would normally be soothing to me, but that night it didn't help. I couldn't stop thinking about how unfair everything was, how I had spent my entire life striving to fit in, only to be given scraps while my siblings had it all. I briefly considered not glancing at my phone as it buzzed in my pocket. However, my curiosity overcame me, and I took it out. It was Emily's text, of course. "Michael, where did you go? You need to come back. Let's talk about this." "Speak?" "Yes, exactly. I have previously heard that. Nothing in my family was ever resolved by talking. The routine was always the same. Mom and Dad would explain why things were the way they were, and I would be told to accept it. However, I wasn't in the mood for any more justifications this time. I stuffed my phone back in my pocket without answering the text. I began to mentally review everything as I sat there, including the years I had been ignored and the times I had felt like an afterthought. Even if I wasn't a flawless child, I still didn't deserve to be treated any less than the other kids. It wasn't truly about the money. It was about being appreciated and seen. And for whatever reason, my parents had come to the conclusion that Sarah or Chris's wants and aspirations were more important than mine. I'm not sure how long I sat there, but eventually the cold began to set in. The nights were growing colder, and fall was rapidly approaching. The wind sliced through the thin material of my jacket as I drew it firmly about myself. I considered going home, but the notion of going back inside that house and confronting them after everything that had transpired was too much to take. I became aware of something while I sat there. I was sick of battling for meager attention and support. I wasn't just angry anymore. I decided then and there that I was done. I'm done trying to fit into their ideal little family photo and to get them to notice me. With a renewed sense of resolve, I rose from the bench. It was time to put myself first and create the life I desired without continuously looking for their approval. I didn't require their sympathy or handouts. I was determined to make it myself and demonstrate to them what they had been missing for years. I experienced an odd mixture of relief and melancholy as I made my way back to my flat. I was relieved that I was at last taking charge of my own life, but I was also sad about the familial relationship I was giving up. I felt like I was headed in the right direction for the first time in a long time, even though I knew it wouldn't be simple. I took a seat at my desk and began making plans as soon as I arrived home. I was determined to put my all into my profession and create something for myself. Maybe they'll realize what they've been missing out on for years when I've succeeded and reached my goals on my own terms. But I had a job to do for the time being. It was time to begin crafting my own narrative, one in which I was more than a supporting character in the accomplishments of others. I was prepared for the moment that would be my chance to shine. First update. Since my last post, which was around 2 years ago, a lot has transpired. I made a choice that would change the trajectory of my life following that terrible family supper. I had had enough of being the afterthought and the forgotten son. It was time to go out on my own, free from my family's support or meddling. I approached my task with a level of resolve I had never experienced before. I began by working longer hours and taking on more tasks and responsibilities at work. After my employer took note, I received a promotion offer a few months later. Though not very significant, it was a positive start. This company idea had always been in the back of my thoughts. I now concluded that the moment had come to turn it into a reality. I planned, saved, and researched whenever I had free time. I reduced all of my expenses, including eating out, buying new clothes, and taking trips. I invested every extra dollar in my company fund. I finally got enough money to launch my firm after a year or so of saving and planning. It was a digital startup that specialized in creating small business software. The initial months were harsh. I was working nonstop, attempting to balance software development, customer meetings, and all of the administrative duties involved in managing a company. After being impressed by my work, a local business owner referred me to his network, which was my first big break. All of a sudden, I had more clients than I could manage alone. My first employee was hired, followed by my second. I had a tiny staff working for me before I realized it. My confidence increased along with the business. I felt like I was actually succeeding on my own terms for the first time in my life. I was no longer living in the shadow of others. I was making something significant, something wholly original. My family was aware of the change, of course. Initially, Emily's texts were just inquisitive inquiries about my well-being. My answers were succinct and ambiguous. Then followed the family get-together invitations, which I graciously turned down because of my professional obligations. The first person to really push was Sarah. One day, she unexpectedly arrived at my workplace. Sarah's eyes widened as she took in the workplace when I walked out to the reception area. Although it wasn't very ostentatious, it was contemporary, polished, and obviously effective. Her voice was a mixture of astonishment and something else I couldn't quite pinpoint when she said, "Michael, this is amazing. Why didn't you inform us of everything?" I shrugged and spoke in a neutral tone. "I have been quite busy." She scowled, obviously dissatisfied with my response. "We have been concerned for you. You no longer attend family dinners. We hardly ever hear back from you." Their parents believe they have done something incorrectly. I experienced a little twinge of guilt. But then I recalled all those years of suffering and feeling inferior as they navigated life with the help of our parents. I said, "I'm doing fine. Actually, it's better than fine." For a while, I simply had to concentrate on my own life. My business kept expanding as the months passed. We expanded our workforce and relocated to a larger office. I even appeared as a rising entrepreneur to watch in a local business publication. My phone was inundated with texts from my family on the day the piece was published. They were all excited, proud, and celebratory. Alongside those emotions, though, I could feel their perplexity and perhaps even a hint of hurt that they were reading about my achievement in a magazine instead of directly from me. None of the mails received a response from me. A part of me felt grim satisfaction, and another part felt guilt. They were the ones on the outside looking in for a change. It was them who were pondering, inquiring, and attempting to comprehend. The next to get in touch was Chris. One evening, as I was leaving the office, he called. When I lifted him up, he said, "Hey, little brother? No talk for a long time. I read that article about your business. It was really amazing." I answered in a neutral tone, "Thanks. A lot of work has gone into this, but it's paying off." "Look," he went on, "we miss you, dude, even though I know the family has been acting strangely recently. This weekend, how about we have supper together? We may congratulate your success and catch up." I was tempted for a second. A part of me missed my family in spite of everything. I thought back to all those dinners, though, where I felt invisible. All the occasions when Chris or Sarah's accomplishments were highlighted above mine. I said, "Thank you for the invitation, but I have a lot of work to do right now, perhaps at a later day." Even though my accomplishment was fulfilling, I realized as I was driving home that evening that it hadn't made things better with my family. It had, if anything, made it wider. I was pleased with my accomplishments and pleased that I had completed everything by myself. However, my success came with a loneliness I hadn't expected. I wasn't prepared to close that gap though. Not quite yet. I had been the family's afterthought for far too long. I wasn't sure whether there was still space for them in my own story, which I was now writing. I would deal with whatever came next on my own terms. Second update, about a year and a half has passed since my last post, and my life has changed drastically once more. The expansion of my tech company has surpassed my wildest expectations. We now serve mid-sized businesses throughout the state as part of our extended service offering. We were listed as one of the top 50 startups to watch in a major business magazine last month. My phone was inundated with congratulations the day the piece was published, but one in particular, a voicemail from my mother, stood out. "Michael, honey, it's Mom. We saw the article. Your father and I are so proud of you. We'd love to talk if you have a moment. Please call us back when you can." I was taken aback. My parents hadn't spoken to me directly in more than a year. I wasn't sure how to react after so much time, so I didn't call back right away. A week later, my assistant told me I had guests when I was working late. I was shocked to see my folks standing in the lobby. They appeared older and more worn out than I had recalled. When they saw me, their eyes glowed with a mixture of pride and apprehension, but Mom's hair had more gray and Dad's shoulders appeared to slump. Mom said hesitantly, "Michael, we hope you don't mind us dropping by like this. We simply had to see you." I escorted them to my office, where they gazed at the contemporary furnishings and the accolades that lined the bookcases. They hadn't seen the struggling child like that in a long time. "This is really amazing, son," Dad remarked in a rough, emotional voice. "You've accomplished a lot for yourself." The uneasy silence was broken by Mom. "We must apologize to you, Michael. After much consideration, we've come to the conclusion that we treated you differently from your siblings. We sincerely apologize for not seeing it at the time, but we do now." A lump formed in my throat. I'd been waiting so long to hear this, but I wasn't sure how to react when the time came. Dad bent over. "We're proud of you, son, not only for your accomplishments but also for taking on this challenge alone. We were oblivious to your abilities until you demonstrated them to us. After that we spoke for a while. I discovered that I was talking more about the setbacks and victories over the previous few years. It was odd, but in a way, it felt perfect, like the puzzle pieces were finally coming together. After a moment of hesitation, Mom continued, "There's something else we wanted to talk to you about, Michael." As our conversation came to an end. "We need your assistance." Immediately, I felt my guard go up. "What sort of assistance?" They looked at one another, and then Dad said something. "The family business is at issue. Son, we're in trouble. We haven't kept up with the changes in the market. Failure to upgrade promptly will put us in danger of becoming bankrupt." Mom hurriedly added, "Especially after everything, we hate to ask. However, we reasoned that given your technological and business acumen." I sat back, feeling a lot of different emotions. Even though their apology appeared genuine and I wanted to get back in touch, I couldn't help but feel suspicious. Was this the true cause of their unexpected arrival? At last, I answered, "I need some time to think about this. There's a lot to take in." With a hopeful yet nervous expression, they nodded. Mom gave me a hard hug as I walked them out. She whispered, "Michael, you are loved. Regardless of what you decide." I spent a lot of time sitting in my office after they went, gazing out at the city lights. I had put forth a lot of effort to prove myself and get here. My family was now requesting my assistance, right after I had achieved the height of my prosperity. I didn't miss the irony. There was a part of me that wanted to be the greater person and offer them assistance. However, a part of me that recalled years of feeling inferior wanted to say no, to let them know that I didn't need them any more than they had needed me. I understood that there was more at stake here than simply business. It had to do with family, forgiveness, and the kind of person I wanted to be. Whatever I chose would influence not just how I interacted with my family but also the type of man I was growing into. With my parents' number displayed on the screen, I took out my phone and gazed at it. Is it better to call or not? Is it better to assist or not? The later the night became and the quieter the city below, the more I thought about the choice. Reddit, what would you do? Do I still owe my family anything after all of this, or is it time to put this chapter behind me for good? Third update. My parents requested assistance with their failing business a month ago. I hired a private investigator since something wasn't quite right. I was shocked by what I found. Instead of failing, the family firm was doing quite well. They had recently landed a big deal. However, it wasn't all. Financial deception spanning years was discovered by the investigator. Inflating the costs of Sarah and Chris's education and marriages, my parents had been transferring funds into personal accounts. $200,000 for Sarah's wedding. A large portion of money was transferred to a covert investing account in her name. Emily's tuition was actually paid into a high-yield savings account, and Chris had a trust fund. In addition to favoring my siblings, they had deliberately worked to secure their financial prosperity at my expense. I was enraged. The deliberate choice to keep me out had been made during all those years of feeling inferior and struggling while my siblings navigated life. I summoned my legal staff to a meeting. There were certain dubious tax strategies that could lead to issues if they were discovered, even if the majority of my parents' acts fell into legal limbo. I invited my folks to come to work with me. They came with a hopeful expression, perhaps expecting me to assist them. When they saw my reaction, their faces sank. I said icily, "Sit down. We must speak." I presented all that I had found. I saw their expressions change from shock to guilt to dread with every admission. "How did you accomplish this?" With a trembling voice, I asked. "You were purposefully keeping me down while uplifting everyone else, even though I felt inadequate all these years." "Why?" My mom broke down in tears. According to my father's explanation, they viewed me as the self-sufficient powerful one. He spoke in a hollow voice. I interrupted him, saying, "I don't want excuses. I want you to be aware of what is about to happen." I informed them that I had contacted the IRS anonymously about their dubious tax procedures. Additionally, I had provided Sarah, Chris, and Emily with proof of how they had profited from our parents' dishonesty. I remarked, "Your ideal family image is about to fall apart. And you can't buy your way out of it this time. Please, Michael," my father pleaded. "We can make this right. We'll put things right." I chuckled without humor. "That's the issue, Dad. You continue to believe that money can solve any problem. However, you cannot purchase my forgiveness. The years I spent feeling unworthy are irreplaceable." I got to my feet. "Go now. Never again do I want to hear from any of you. I no longer consider myself to have a family." My mother glanced back, crying, as they walked away. You are loved, Michael, we always have. I gave her a direct look. I don't want to be involved if this is how you define love. I stayed in my office for a while after they left, feeling a mixture of relief, betrayal, and rage. I was relieved that I could finally stop questioning my value and that I knew the truth. Sarah, Chris, and Emily sent me texts in the days that followed. Some were irate, some beseeching. None of them received a response from me. With fresh energy, I pushed myself back into my work. My business kept expanding, and I discovered fulfillment in coaching aspiring business owners from comparable backgrounds. 6 months have passed since that altercation. The pain of what I've lost, or rather, what I never truly had, still aches on some days. Mostly, though, I feel liberated. Free from the burden of attempting to convince others of my value when they never intended to. I am aware that some people may believe that I was too severe and that the family deserves forgiveness. However, I've discovered that leaving poisonous relationships, even ones that include your own blood, can occasionally be the healthiest course of action. To everyone who has ever felt like the odd one out, know that your value is not based on how your family views you. You possess the ability to craft your own narrative, generate your own achievements, and locate those who will appreciate you for who you are. For my part, I'm concentrating on creating my chosen family, which consists of friends and coworkers that encourage me, share in my accomplishments without feeling envious, and support me during difficult times without keeping score. Regardless of our backgrounds or experiences, let's celebrate fresh starts, chosen families, and creating our own narratives. We have the power to influence the future, and I'm eager to see where that takes us. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you.